Welcome back to ALGS. The Split One playoffs have begun. It's time. The best crowd in esports. Make some noise. And as we get ready for game number one.
Look at the bodies. It's a graveyard down here.
Can he get the double? Yes, he does. Going for the triple kill to kick off the ALGS playoffs in London.
He's going to be hitting some big
Oh
shots.
my goodness, the damage.
The Bravers are finally landing.
Guard is going to win this game.
Ascend will pick up the win.
Oh, he was like, he punches him.
Are you kidding me?
He's on main.
It's
should work out. Peekaboo. Oh, it's going with the Kramer. He's going to go in and finish off the damage as well.
Setting a world record.
23 kills. $1 million is on the line today. It is a shootout.
I'm gonna move forward.
To become the champions here in London.
You want the money?
You get the damage here. It comes. TSM up in the skies. House goes down for the house. London belongs to TSM.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the ALGS! It's Dia and Zephyr back with you for the very first preseason qualifier of Year 4. So Zephyr, welcome on board. Zephyr, please.
Oh, okay. There you go. Apologize.
That's alright, it's a good way to start the season.
I was about to say, that's a Dia standard right there. Alright. At the end of the day, what I was going to say was it's a funny place that we've signed ourselves in, and for a lot of these players alongside us, this is the start to a major journey today. Not just for the preseason qualifiers, but Year 4 as a whole. I mean, this is the breaking point. This is where everything begins. The stories are written. We're in Chapter 1, baby.
And as you say, this is, for many teams, the starting line for this year, and yet it's come off the back of a lot of time playing this game at both the Pro League level for some, and the Challenger Circuit level for others. So for some, time to prove themselves in their own personal stories, and in other ways, many are looking to get back on the stage that they once held. But it is just the first one. It is our first preseason qualifier, and we've got 4 of them. So let's talk a little bit about that and how these preseason qualifiers actually fit into the ALGS ecosystem for Year 4.
That's right. So preseason qualifiers are no different than what we've seen in any other year previously. This is the starting point for all and many rosters that compete here in the ALGS. And like you said, between some of our Challenger Circuit friends to our Pro League teams, it starts here in the preseason where they mix to find themselves a chance in the Pro League directly.
And the way that they're going to do that is by winning one of these things. Right now, we're over at the left of your screen with the one little diamond, I think we'll call it, that has the red dot inside it. These are the preseason qualifiers that happen, setting the stage for everything yet to come. Split 1 of the Pro League and the Challenger Circuit that will be running, mirroring it, coming in 2024. All of this is set up, is positioning for these tournaments, and that means that these 4 preseason qualifier tournaments that are going to run over the next couple of weeks are going to give us an additional couple of teams to round out the Pro League. 8, in fact. So Zephyr, you can get there 2 ways. Let's break down the first.
Well, right off of the bat today in these finals here, if you manage to be that #1 team coming out on top of the mountain hill of these teams, you're going to find yourself directly on that train heading to Pro League. On the other hand, though, that's not the only way. If in these 4 preseason qualifiers you aren't able to pick up one of those wins, we'll look at the top 4 scoring teams from their PSQ points and send them on their way as well.
So you can either be one of our 4 winners through the preseason qualifiers, or be in the top 4 teams after those winners in terms of points. This is important because it means that we're sending, at the end of the preseason qualifiers, 8 teams onward to participate in Pro League, and moreover, Zephyr, it means that it's important that you show up for the very first one, because if you're trying to catch up in points later, we've already seen this in ALGS years past, it can come back to bite you.
Yeah, and for a lot of these teams, figuring out how they manage not only the chance to find these victories upon these new rosters, but also how they manage their points and set themselves up for that third and fourth and final PSQ is a huge part of the game here. But speaking of those points, we can take a look at those very quickly here. The ALGS scoring system is no different than usual. 12, 9, 5, 4. I've said it literally 100 times. And of course, Dia, one more way to accumulate.
Yeah, there is, I think importantly, a way that we're counting points in the background here that is not reflective of how we're counting them on the day. There are preseason qualifier points that individual players accumulate as part of their team, but I'll be honest, that's way too complicated and we can get into it much, much later. For right now, this is what you need to know on your screen, and as we jump on over, it's where we're actually going to be playing things out. There was a lot of speculation as to whether we'd be involving Olympus in this year's ALGS, but at least for the preseason qualifiers, it's been confirmed that we're sticking with Storepoint and World's Edge, and for today, we're starting on Storepoint.
A new map and a new place for some of these teams. It still is left unproven in our competitive ALGS scene, but it has begun to see some play in a general sense among these teams. And speaking of which, let's take a look at the top 20 that join us here today. You've made mention of it, Dia. Some names familiar, some new, but plenty on their way towards success.
Very much so, and while these are not ordered in the ways that they qualified out of the semifinals and into today's games, we'll be referencing that throughout the broadcast so you can get a bit of a sense of what teams were performing how over, as I said, the course of this weekend. Because as much as we show up for this day of broadcast, the finals, find out who ends up being in Pro League, these players, they have been going all weekend.
That's right. It started, of course, this last Saturday into Sunday, and on today, we're talking about some I would say regions finding themselves in the hest of over hundreds of teams that have been diminished, broken down into the 20 that you see here. So, to say the best of the best is almost a harsh understatement. I mean, these players are on the cusp of Pro League greatness. One of these teams will officially be a part of the Pro League after our 6 games today.
And it does make it all the more exciting that we are starting on Stormpoint, because there was actually a bit of conversation about this on Twitter yesterday. It was Raven that started the conversation initially, but about the difference between practice and play, and specifically about the difference between Pro League qualifiers and Pro League. And one of the very important skills that you see demonstrated in these preseason qualifiers is your, I'd say, ability to take a lead and run with it. Nothing incentivizing that more than when we're on Stormpoint.
It's going to be the start for these teams, and one where they need to find themselves in their best pacing, because you don't want to be one of those squads that is forced to catch up as we talk about the tail end here, especially on World's Edge, a map that has found its practice, found its stability, and might give some of these teams a little bit more confidence, because, I mean, as we start to look at some of these names here before we get into game, there are no small pennies here. Obviously, you have some new friends and new faces, but just eyeing what we see currently, I'm looking at Dolphin there, Masuko, AJ, 0-0, Denze, Null, the coach of Ascent, our boys over at Solo Q Goats, back once again, Diff and Shiv. I mean, the amount of teams that have come through here with the histories behind them is something that we're going to have the chance to discuss all day long.
Yeah, for the team specifically need more bullets. I'm looking at Dolph, and the reason that I'm looking at Dolph as sort of the first player to highlight for me personally coming into today is that we've already seen Dolph take rosters through the preseason qualifiers before. He's made it all the way to Pro League before, and he's made it, and I say specifically him, because he was a new addition to the roster at the time, because he took them all the way to Pro League, and then once in Pro League, began that cycle again of being changed teams and etc. etc. Dolph is somebody who can singularly make a difference to a squad, and I want to see how big that difference is today.
So whether it be VZD or now need more, we'll see if G-Dolphin, Tryhard Thor, and Linkser can define themselves in today's matches. And if you get to pick one, I'll take one as well. I'm very interested to see how LVH fare. Okay, Vapes is someone that has not been a major staple of the ALGS scene for a very long time. For those who obviously don't know, this is a man who used to be a dominant form factor alongside Alliance prior to the involvement of Effect. And I mean, recently got the chance to match up against him personally at LAN at Champs, where he was playing alongside the Alliance booth. But this is the first time we've really gotten to see this man back in action in the competitive scene in almost over a year.
All right, we've had plenty of time to absorb the players. Now let's find out what legends they're going to be running, as there is, importantly, the addition of Conduit into your available legends for year 4, and already teams like Cold Revenge, 3 Dragons have started picking her up, and let's just say nothing of Rats, who, well, we'll get to talk about that a bit later.
Yeah, there's the big mix-up here and a lot of flexibility in what these comps present here. I'm seeing a little bit of Valkyrie back in the mix, and some of those newer picks, things like that Conduit, of course, but also Revenant in some of its mix-up of how it can perform also there, as well as we look over at solo queue goats. But it starts here as our dropship makes its way through for the very first time. Dia, we'll take a look at where these teams find themselves in their early game.
And they may very well find themselves in the same place, especially in Game 1 of any map, be it World's Edge or Stormpoint. You are much more likely to encounter contests. So as everybody rockets on forward from the jump ship, we may still be finding a lot of teams that are contesting each other for new POIs, like the Pylon or Cedo Station, even Zeus Station, that's been pulled in a little bit closer alongside Lightning Rod. Stormpoint is notorious for its early fighting and then sort of protracted mid-game.
Yeah, and this is something that we'll see in terms of the rotations later on and how that transpires in terms of getting to these end games a little bit quicker, as we do have a lot smaller and less presence on some of these maps. Most notably, though, for this early start, it's going to be Red Dragon and Rats down here on the contest in Cenote Cave, and then 3 Average Kids and LVH in their take towards the downed Beast. We'll have to tune in a moment and see exactly how they might fare. Keep a watch, though, on both solo queue goats and this mix-up between Passion and there, or might be a small glitch there. I would be very surprised to see them that dominantly taking the Trident away that far west, but who knows? Getting sneaky behind the screens.
Yeah, I mean, Trident feels good, and it's actually one of the reasons that Cenote Cave perhaps hasn't felt as good recently without as much access to that mobility. Red Dragon, however, with access to evidently plenty of weaponry, starting on the push and already feeling pretty good about it, but getting cross-beamed. ZH has to back off, pop a little bit of shield regen, and get Red Dragon ready for the push again.
This is a team that performed out of their minds just behind us in the semifinals yesterday and found themselves also in some of our early splits. And while they'll face Nile and Nox here, Sorbin and Mania for the likes of the Rats have their difficulties now down to 1. The Dragons are on top.
CH needing to pop the reload, finally gets one. There are still some foes in the area, but now fully shielded up and 3v at least 2. Red Dragon are going to be just fine. And there we go. 3v1.
We'll see how it fares there. I assume someone, you know, hiding away, sneaking, and I literally hate saying this, but living up to the name, Rats, on the board once again there. And the Dragons, I don't think there's anything to elicit in terms of a reference in the Cenote Cave, but they're happy to take it. It becomes their den, their hoard of loot here for them upon this round 1 close.
I like the literary sort of illusions that we've got going on. Passion disengaging with the Trident that you talked about earlier, and Rats wrapping around the south side of Barometer, where Wanted should just be finishing their loot paths. This zone, as we already saw a teaser of where Zone 2 would be pulling us later, is going a little bit further into the east, surrounding areas like Stormcatcher and the lagoon just north of Launchpad. So a team like Need More Bullets are going to be right at the center and one of the earliest teams to the rotation.
Speaking of early rotations here, Stay Healthy in their best foot forward have already found themselves some early aggression coming off the backside of Cascades. Some solo follow-up, but Double Smoke does leave some success on what almost looked like a good rotation there. Shout out to my boy AJ with the 30-30. Short work on that play.
Oh That was a really nice way to do this, and we are seeing teams, a lot of them, opt into Horizon. We saw Horizon Conduit Bangalore earlier, and now we've got, I would argue, double smokes in a way, since we've got both Bangalore and Catalyst now teamed up on Stay Healthy. A lot of both defensive and offensive utility on both of these legends, when paired with the Horizon and her ability to, of course, initiate and find new angles for your team. Stay Healthy really do have the ability to pick fights, but moreover with Catalyst, unlike teams that might be running Conduit, have the ability to pick a spot and bunker down.
Something that I'm interested to see with this roster is that this is the first new form of them alongside Atnum. This was someone who played through the Blue Whites in the previous iteration of Year 3 after we saw Linkser removed from this roster, who is also competing here today. So that new third in its presence, we'll see if that is something that fits the bill here for the likes of them.
Or SCTA, or as some of you may know them, Se Comporta Ya. They've actually found a pretty inactive spot, all things considered, to play out through the mid-game. With a Watson, of course, they're going to be making use of their own ability to bunker down, and that's to say nothing of the Catalyst alongside this. An extraordinarily defensive comp for them, and one that should allow them plenty of safety to age into the mid-game, like fine wine, picking up a few points.
Given how long Se Comporta Ya has been a part of ALGS, they're more than a fine wine. They're an expensive brandy at the end of time here, and huge shout out to Noel, by the way. I mean, this is a guy who hasn't been present in a lot of the scene overall as a whole, and still manages to make it to finals. Still represents after an entire year of coaching alongside Sen to join some of the Polish powerhouse that we see between Seven and Ezzy here. Passion, though, this is a name that will ring true to many between YQ from Vortex, 0-0 from the previous iteration, and Denze, a part of Nightmare. They're more than happy to lay waste to their previous teammates below them.
You know, no matter who exactly is on the Passion roster, they have always been known for one thing, and that is taking fights early and often. The only thing pushing them back from taking another engagement is the fact that they were being shot in the side, and now they're being shot in the side once again. In fact, getting pushed, and YQ is down.
The boys coming through from the other side will take advantage of this level of aggression. Remember, this roster that's working Conduit, so for anybody who wants to find themselves in that direct 3v3, that is an immediate disadvantage if you have the safety to go alongside it. 0-0 though. Huge shout out to send the passive setup here alongside this Catalyst that might give them the time, and surprisingly, YQ's back in it, able to get the crawl, able to get down below, and now, yes, successfully sticking for that revive.
Power Catalyst as well is going to make this revive impossible to interrupt. However, that doesn't mean you can't follow up on it. And the Catalyst, while just behind them, does save Passion for a little while longer. Quick shield swap makes the 1v1 almost possible, but it doesn't keep them alive. And Babylons and the boys take them out.
And this is something that I discussed before we got into it, that you'll be seeing here today. The aggression that comes through from something like that Revenant alongside the Conduit is going to be a test for a lot of these teams here. Having the ability to have the double health ultimate alongside the tactical there from Conduit to give you that additional speed is something terrifying in the hands of an incredible fragger. Remember, the likes of the boys used to be a part of that From Nowhere / Heroes roster, where they used to run things like the Lifeline, right? In a battle medic form where they were in the fights, getting hyper aggressive, and then utilizing that revive. I've argued that the Conduit coming into play here is that, but even better for that team's playstyle.
In very many ways, yes, lets you stay active so much longer, and there's a reason that we're seeing so many teams pick her up, and in very different styles as well. Some of them on edge, and some of them, honestly, just wanting to play a little bit safer in zone and get some of the sustain in an almost Watson-like fashion that Conduit provides. We do still have some teams late rotating in, but we are starting to see this circle take shape. What is likely to be an ending on this hillside with a very sharp distinction between high and low ground.
Yeah, you get the hill out in front towards the north where we see Stay Healthy contesting, or potentially that western building finish over by Baka Hall, where that will be the potential place of play here. Plenty of other teams, though, having to make their rotate in are going to face difficulties because we talk about this village that you see out here towards the east, where teams will try to fight their way in through the choke, but more importantly, the Stormcatcher itself. It's something that will dissuade a lot of teams from having free rotation from these extensive distances where they can't quite cross the fields ahead.
Taking a look at Need More Bullets out there, who must be pretty proud of themselves after seeing Passion go down in the kill feed. They might not know it was them, but with the shots they were putting in from afar, they played a role.
Cold Revenge here on their southern rotate, a team that is looking for their entrance like many others, but is no stranger to the landscape that is Apex here. Vushi, Danny, previous iterations, especially in the long term here. Vushi most notably coming recently off of the Vortex team as well here. See how they fare for 202. It's a roster with some fans in the crowd as they'll look for their climb up towards the south side of Stormcatcher here. This can be an incredibly difficult area to eclipse when you've got fence lines held ahead.
202 also in a tight spot. They don't have the verticality that will be provided to them by a legend like Horizon, and have really tripled down on big utility with Conduit, Catalyst, and Bangalore. They are doing pretty well to hold on to this high ground for now, but once they have to move, it's going to have to be all or nothing. They are going to have to out-hands their opponents, because without a Horizon to make an awkward off-angle appear, it is just going to be numbers checks.
That slow rotation might have to come down to something like Aussie Owl, containing themselves alongside that Dark Veil to give them the ability to get up to that height. The only problem, though, is that once you get into that position, you no longer have that tool for any further rotation or defensive ability. Notably, though, on the opposite side of things here, much louder, much more aware, the solo QO Goats trying to make work of a very similar composition around the Revenant, albeit no Conduit to give that Revenant a lot of that presence that we have seen built around this composition in recent months.
Defensive smokes hold the low ground once more. With Rev ult presumably on cooldown the next minute, it'll be tough. Shiv's gonna start pushing out. Very well known on this Bangalore.
A fan favorite, some would say. Well, surprisingly, this is going to be a harder rotation that they have to opt to take as they make their way towards this western side, and it's going to bring up a lot of that discussion we talked about earlier with these teams that will be holding from height, coming off of Stormcatcher and getting into this choke ahead of Command Center. You'll be propositioned right in the front of just about everybody, and that's why you see things like this evac tower trying to be abused from the west end. Most of these teams aren't feeling confident in a direct walk-in, especially with guys like Solo Q Goats also now standing as an obstacle.
Diffq's in a bit of an awkward spot on low ground. Does give him a good head peek to work with, but them having the smoke could be nice for them to reposition. Solo Q Goats do, however, utilize the Kraber offensively instead, pushing around and into the Catalyst wall that was just erected defensively.
Bit of spikes in the return there, but Shiv from the backside as well as Diff finding that knock will eliminate one more here. Usually going to be fully cleaned up alongside Sunzi here as they will look for the success of their further rotation. The three Dragons are alive by one back towards Command Center, but for the likes of Solo Q Goats, it might not be the presence of mind that they need to spare here. 56 seconds on the board for them to find themselves a happy home within this next zone.
Wonder where their ults are at as they move on to what is sure to be another fight. You can't share Command Center. We imagine Solo Q Goats are going to need to take space here. Space almost being created for them by that Catalyst.
Jay Hanzo is going to put some presence down on the back end here, but that wall does give them the potential to move up on LVH. But like I talked about earlier, a lot of these sightlines from Stormcatcher are providing difficulties for them getting the very confident rotation on that off angle. As a result, wall will go down, defense will no longer be available, and shot from both sides. The Solo Q Goats, they have to come up with their path.
No smokes left right now. The recent changes to Bangalore really starting to hurt the Solo Q Goats. The Shiv does push forward, buying the team a little bit more space with some damage. The rest of the push is going to come through as Zerafer climbs on over, taking tick damage from Conduit, and ultimately going down to base.
Ultimately there, Dip and Shiv pieced from behind as the solo queue goats are eliminated in 16th. And surprisingly, it's at the hands alongside only coming through as that rat. A quick cleanup on the south side, and for many of our teams, getting to this height has been the true difficulty. So many of these chokes uneclipsable.
LVH still playing out of this corner, seemingly impossible to push. Finally, the first one goes down, but the wingman's really doing some work on the follow-up. Liffin still has shield regen off of the conduit, turns around and tries to find a one-clip, but cannot. And LVH finally go down to the fourth party of the boys.
I'll tell you what, for the boys here, this is another roster that they found their success up against, and with the closing of that Stormcatcher circle, they're actually completely alone in that presence of that corner, which allows them to take advantage of the direct 3v3 in that composition there. Having something like that conduit only lasts so long, but when you take good fights like this, where you know no one is putting presence up against you, it's the perfect opportunity to play around those advantages. Though I will say, Dia, we look towards that zone, and it is still very offensive for so many of these rosters that have played the POI direct.
For Stay Healthy, I'm looking at this going, hey, it's good. For players, I'm like, you're about to encounter a lot of trouble. They're not the only ones. We've got fights kicking off all around the map. Looking for better rotations as the average kids start moving around offensive Catalyst wall. They've got to do Conduit ult as well. Finally have a bit of a corner to play, but just to follow up, have to be swinging through Catalyst wall, taking the blind and the slow in order to make sure their teammates stay safe. The three average kids do not last long, and it looks like need more bullets won't be either.
From both angles here, No Days Off are happy to try and clean this one up. It'll be, in the end, that creeping barrage that does enough damage from Plexus here to send them on their way. 8 squads remaining as we break into the top end of our fights, and for so many of these teams, they're still on that rotate for 202, most notably down from the height below to contest upon the pills and the gravity ahead here. Looks like for Nisa, Sherp, and Max, down to their last moments, a single wall will maybe give Max their chance to survive.
The average Funk Enjoyer is just getting obliterated by a Conduit ultimate. In the meantime, the slow being really useful as the zone starts to close and assists with the damage. However, players have survived for the moment, and now we're faced with the problem of having to push up onto the high ground, where No Days Off will be trying to make the same rotation. I would use the word mirroring them in a way.
One of the big things here that we'll have to look and see is, most notably when we talk about the heights, Stay Healthy. Dominantly in this position for as long as anyone, a 3-piece down towards this low ground, likely to contest on this upwards rotation. And while, yes, once more a roster to parallel the opposite side of Stay Healthy here, can that roster continue to lay out their success from this position? It's going to be challenged from the strike path.
This very fight gives teams on the low ground an opportunity. Only one of them can truly take it, but trying to just clamor for control over the singular pillar is taking the attention of both teams on high ground. Got Strike Pack, it seems likely to lose the fight, but as they swing in and manage to take out Stay Healthy, now what they've got to be worried about is the third party that's coming from No Days Off.
A perfect rotation up there will secure that success for No Days Off, as now they elicit the control from this height to play forward. Below them, we've seen the rotation, though, just as quickly from Jukes here, and the boys on this opposite side looking to put pressure just in the same way.
It is another protracted fight, however, that's buying time for Babylon's, Clemmy, Taco, and the boys to move on over and involve themselves in this 3-way battle. The final 3-way battle of this first game, where players have the low ground, are in the worst position, which may actually be the thing that keeps them safe.
I mean, it'll be a challenge for the players. No real verticality to claim in terms of getting to a position on this height above them. Something of a Watson setup that prevents them from having the easy of climb-ups. And most importantly than that, the inability to play out of this western side. The minute they make any kind of presence or peek, the boys are here, ready and waiting to take advantage and find shots up against them here.
players don't have a conduit either. They're not able to take these cheeky peeks and know that their shield economy will be long enough. Instead, look at the spread the boys are taking off to the side, covering every feasible angle. Well, no days off. Figure their best option is just to play for second.
Sending their way forward here. They will not find the knocks they need upon the smoke. A fun send from Sherbert will succeed deal, but it is almost inevitable that the boys come through here. Full health from height, a quick beam or two to secure the drops necessary as they take the first win of the day.
Really well played from the boys at the end. Great coverage to create the no-win scenario for No Days Off for players. And it is a really nice finish to our first game because we got a bit of everything on the way in, but most importantly, Zephyr, we had a lot of fighting on the way to our Game 1 finish.
And I think a lot of that comes from the fact of this zone being so punishing to the positions of those who don't play around it. You know, sometimes we talk about the presence of what zones allow you to do or how many teams they allow to be aware and playing. Something like this open-ended close towards the north side of Storm Point, as we've seen many times in the past, is incredibly difficult to truly get involved in and survive through. That's why you see teams like Stay Healthy, albeit maybe not competing or fighting throughout the majority of this match, but the presence of their position alone allowing them to get as far into our top 5.
Let's see how far it got them, because we've got the standings ready to go after the first game. The scores that we talked about earlier now get to come to fruition as we see who's managed to land themselves where after our first game. It should come as no surprise to anyone. The boys are doing just fine.
Sitting at 26 there, that means none to the less that they finished off that game alone with 14 KP there. Almost 5 entire squads falling to their hands. No Days Off just in the realm of second place there alone. Also picking up a wealth of KP to put them just behind the like of the boys. The rest of the lobby, though, contesting between single digits.
This is tough, but it is the first game, right? We talked about taking momentum and running with it on Storm Point, and that's something that every team is going to have the opportunity to do after our first game. We are going to take a very short break, take a breather, grab some water before we jump on into game number 2. Hello, everyone, and welcome back as we get ready to dive into Game 2. I'm just writing up all my drop spots here because now we've actually got a game under our belt, Zephyr. It's a lot easier to figure out how Game 2 is going to go.
Especially off the tail end of things like those early contests here. For those who aren't aware, we're only 2 games up before Stormpoint is on its way. So if you're reflecting after that last game and you don't like what you saw, especially for a team like the Rats, this is your potential opportunity to swing things and change it up before your points are cemented in stone.
Let's look at the standings one more time to refresh people's memory, perhaps catch up a few of our viewers who are just jumping in on what exactly happened during Game 1, because the boys took a really nice win over just near the north of the map, over by Lightning Rod, or what used to be, what was that, Thunderwatch, Stormcatcher area. I miss Thunderwatch, but new Lightning Rod's fun.
It's still there. It has been delegated down to the likes
now
of a side.
Yeah.
Which now no one will
It's no
know.
longer a state, it's a city-state.
There you go. For the boys, it's a big lead and one that they hope to continue having here as we talk about the rest of Stormpoint, a map that allows them to find success in their aggression. A huge shout out, though, to No Days Off on the tail end there of their own success. They spelled out the rotation that gave them the ability to compete for the end game. Had they just let that one slide through, they'd be climbing up from the low ground like many others that we
Many others, like perhaps players who, sitting at 8 points, may not have the hottest, flashiest first game, but top 3 performance is going to be just fine for them, as they were one of the few survivors that had to come out of the low ground. And it was interesting watching how teams chose to position for that, because we had a couple of different reads, a lot of them relying on Stormcatcher positioning, and especially fascinating when we talked about, remember, my player to watch at the very start, Need More Bullets, and the way that they tried to rotate out through the east and into Stormcatcher, putting pressure on teams inside. To end up in the top 10 is still alright, but it didn't quite get them high KP or high placement, leaving them and us with a lot left to discover.
Well, the big thing here to realize, and it's always that something that takes place and puts itself into action with any ALGS series, is the fact that it is just that first game, and the presence of points needed to accumulate or put you on the top is still very much achievable in the time left remaining. And I wouldn't even say the 5 games, just going into the remnants of Stormpoint here is enough to put you in the, well, driver's seat for the potential endgame.
No, not necessarily, and that is part of the wonderful thing about Apex, about preseason qualifiers, is that there are always a lot of changing variables, and I'll stick with the ones that are unlikely to change, I'll say. It's not they can't, but they're unlikely to change, and a lot of that comes down to where we're choosing to drop. We did see some contests really early on. You'll remember the one over by Cenote. However, not the only one that went down. LVH still shares Downed Beast with 3 average kids, and both those teams got out pretty alright.
Yeah, it was a bit of a gentleman's agreement there, as 3 average kids opted to take Southside completely in their lonesome, and after being in the presence of a shared area, just made quick rotation, had no interest in directly competing for the likes of that POI. As a result, like you said, both rosters got the opportunity to walk out of there, even if maybe their point score doesn't spell the success of those rotations.
And it was LVH that ended up rotating over to the north, which I found particularly interesting, landing themselves by Command Center, being that really defensive team that took multiple pushes to unseat. We saw it started by teams like Solo Q Goats and ultimately finished by the boys as they took out LVH on an interesting rotate of their own, choosing to move down and into a more active position, which I find especially fascinating because the boys land up by Lightning Rod, and they could have just played real slow and walked down the high ground, and they didn't.
And it's something that we've gotten a chance to discuss a little bit, but I'm more than happy to dive in furthermore here. The ability of something alongside the Conduit showing a lot of presence as a 3v3 dominator, and then taking that extent even further more so to work with the Revenant. Something that only gets its ability to truly succeed, in my opinion, when you have someone who has, 1, the caliber of play and style as a single individual to elicit the advantage against another team, and then on top of that, the support of something like that Conduit to make it even better, even more aggressive here. The combination of that Forward Shadows alongside the Radiant Transfer is something that has yet to source out a true answer or counter. If you're in a strict 3v3 situation up against that, you lose.
Yeah, I mean, just think about, even with Fortified being in the game and transferring that into effective health, Revenant can have an insane amount of health. When you've got purple or even red, God forbid, shields, and then you also layer on top of that the ult from Revenant, and you've got Conduit healing you in the couple of seconds that you take between trying to one-clip people, yeah, you're gonna end up with a pretty ridiculous amount of hit points to chew through.
Now, I'll tell you what, it's something that has tended to now bleed on its way over to some of our rosters. Shamani and the Rats picking that one up there. And for the Rats, it's something that I'm actually more than curious to see for this early start. That Conduit, something that gives a lot of presence towards contests as a whole to have that tactical advantage in your health exchange. That could be a deciding factor for allowing them to potentially come out on top of a 3v3.
Drop onto the map once more. It is going to be all about the contests once again, seeing what teams end up not just coming out on top and taking out the other, but in the case of a rotation like Downed Beast, what directions we're going to end up going in. Whether you get to escape, run into a team that is already prepped up and looting out. Red Dragon, as an example, landing up towards the north, all grouped up together. Fair enough strategy, but they've always got the opportunity to disengage if they don't get enough loot and move out towards the west instead.
This is a team that came through, I believe, just yesterday in the presence of big leads, right? Double wins, 61 points in semifinals, just behind second there from 3AK with 64. I mean, this is a roster that should be a nightmare for many of these teams that we contest and put themselves up against, because something that I discussed with a lot of our preseason qualifiers is that the power of play and the quality of these lobbies tends to not truly increase until we hit that semifinals. So I think having your advantage and finding your major wins as early as semifinals is still a good representation of what you are capable of when we start to talk about the finals.
Imagine so. Plushka getting chunked out a little bit. Does take a risk even by popping over to close the door, but should be just fine. Rats, however, are all over this, swarming the building, if you will. Sorbin gonna take ultimate height for now. Sentinel still charged up for one more shot. But the Rats are gonna have to play this one slow because Red Dragon are starting to group up themselves. I imagine planting their feet for a defense.
And this building can be one that is arguably hard to eclipse, especially if you're playing presence of either that second floor or height here. Tackling the opportunity to close the distance and choke this one out in the hands of something like the Rats is usually one of the more hard things to do in Cenote. You have to wonder, as we talked about with that Conduit, if that will pull the presence and the necessary advantage. And given the additional time that this is taking, you might see something like those Forward Shadows available for that Revenant, if not immediately, yes, assumed.
Wanted go down. One team sort of off in the distance, not even a part of this contest, but still suffering early. Will the Rats take control of this building? They say, all right, you're going to sit in here. We're going to see what we can do.
Tolkien there with that Forward Shadow's ultimate to give a bit of protection. Unable to find the tactical up to the window, and instead is popped down by Go. Sorbin shot in the back by the likes of Mania here, and it's going to force that energy barricade down out of Mania for the survival of this roster. Looking for the success on the stairwell, and for the Rats, they've now been choked out. Literally neck up against that Bangalore there, kind of losing a sense of this fight.
As soon as they get pushed on high ground as well, everything falls apart. Very well played by Red Dragon to wait this out and ultimately take a very decisive push. There's plenty of time to reset, with med kits being craftable, and of course, plenty of crafting materials down here in Cenote. Red Dragon get 3 kills and so much time to work with, something that other teams do not have the luxury of. Take, for example, LVH that are involved in a fight for their life.
Cold Revenge here up against them, faring the difficulties last round, eeping out with just 0 points. They need to find their success, especially even up against a roster like this. For the likes of LVH, whatever they started with, whatever they were working with, they had to pull back to the low ground. It is going to be the utilization of that Dark Veil and Energy Barricade on the backside that they will no longer have as an advantage. And good nades aren't enough to put the top in.
Base keeps looking topped up. I'm really liking the way that LVH are playing this. We got some of Hanzo throwing out Sky Nades, trying to bait people in, but in the end, it isn't Sky Nades, it isn't gimmicks that's winning LVH this fight, that wins, rather, LVH this fight. They straight up outgun their opponents. They're playing a game of whack-a-mole.
I like how you make that reference, because at the end of the day, it's not just the sightlines that they find on the edge here, it's the timing and presence of how they approach that height that allows them to find that success. Opposite-ended positions with the same advantage of damage, right, allows them to work out the success of dropping a singular opponent without they themselves getting knocked in return there. So, for LVH, they continue to prove why they themselves might be one of the best rosters in the lobby. For the players, already down and out here, it is left up to Jukes to survive.
One of the underrated things about running Conduit as well is that a situation like this is still at least recoverable. For players, well, I won't say that you can't still do well. You can theoretically win the game as a solo, but you're not going to win it as 3 people unless you're able to get those banners, which is a whole lot harder in lobbies like this.
Yeah, we'll have to see there. For the players, I am interested to see how that roster fares. Have had some success in some alternative tournaments, and more importantly than that, it's one of the first times that we actually see Kazakh on a different roster. The namesake and the headway for 789 for such a long time, it feels odd. It feels odd not to even make reference to the numbers themselves.
And now that we've got more, let's say, positions being cemented in this game, teams are starting to take root up on the high ground, and it is a very similar looking zone to what we had just last game, but importantly, so many more teams have taken height around Lightning Rod early on. Nobody is confused about how close to Stormcatcher this is going to get. Everybody wants to approach this from the top of, well, I want to say Storm Point just as a whole. There's no other top here.
This is going to reveal, though, this moment that it is not going to be the high pull off towards the north side of Wall, off of that initial pull for those teams that don't have that early ring scan. We are going to be pulling this one back more towards the height of Lightning Rod itself and just towards that side of Thunderwatch. And for those who aren't used to it yet, the wall that used to separate a lot of the presence that you saw on this northern side no longer exists. It is a direct connection between Lightning Rod to Thunderwatch. These two buildings are within each other's sightlines as of the changes that have come through this recent season.
Have you been landing here a lot, by the way, Zephyr? Like, has this been a smooth transition for you?
In terms of, like, what I know, no, absolutely not. I feel like for anybody, the minute they get into the new map of the season, it takes like 10, 30 games. For me, do you know what really tripped me up? It's not the presence of the new POIs, it's the color scheme. The pinks really threw me off. I'm so used to the darker, more earthy tones of the original Stormpoint, and for some reason, that alone was what confused me.
The hearts in the sky were a little too much. You're like, come on, this is Apex Legends. We're not.
I don't know. It's pretty.
It is. It is. I've been enjoying it. Passion, perhaps not enjoying it so much, as even as Denze looks towards the sky, is unable to find a lot of damage of his own, instead leaving Passion to cycle out shields and slowly heal up. In fact, slowly bleed out resources in a spot that can be pushed by just about everyone and their mother.
And you'll see very familiar names, though, in this zone right now, from the likes of Stay Healthy, who are there in our top, to No Boys off of their win, and even No Days Off, who have already made that heavy rotation. Now, granted, a lot of the presence of being there quicker is one to note, coming through from positions like the Lightning Rod and like Stormcatcher, but even for Stay Healthy, outside of Cascades, they've continued to show how expedient they can be in terms of setting themselves up for these end zones.
You touched on this last game, and we're about to see it play out on our screen. Solo Q Goats are one of the few teams running Revenant that do not have a conduit to back them up, relying on Diff Q to make use of the extra HP, and then have a bunch of space created by things like Catalyst and Bangalore. Diff Q, however, does get chunked out, does not go down, however, and takes a quick reset. The fact that Zeraphir has fallen, though, and Solo Q Goats are still on the low ground, puts them in a terrible position.
This is one that will come back to bite here as we talk about what they'll be able to do. And for me, it lets me know as we see Jukes there in the presence of this fight that the players might be back in it there. I know we talked about Jukes previously as that rat, but I'm of the assumption that they could have found, yes, the successful revive at least onto Barbie of 1 here. This is going to technically put them up even against Solo Q Goats, but that is information they don't know and they don't have.
There's just so many teams that are involved in this fight that nobody expected to be involved in this fight, with now 2 duos and still the singular trio gatekeeping the transition into Lightning Rod and the surrounding area. RIP Prowlers.
Well, they've got room to spare here. For the 3 Dragons, I can't say the same. The one team on the defense of height are happy to find the players now stuck up against the wall, and it will be Jukes that takes to the backside of zone, sliding down there as you just barely catch in the midst of that Dark Veil rotation, as 3 Dragons now list themselves as the only team to come out of this cave from the west. It's a big success, at least for now, but one that I do temper my expectations, Dia. Getting up to the exchange between Thunder and Lightning outside of this choke can be very difficult to play, even if you have a slight hillside advantage.
Still, too many squads left for you to be comfortable with how you've positioned so far. You didn't need to be in top 15 to pick up any placement points, and 3 Dragons want to make sure their back is clear, even of a singular player, before moving in. We know that it isn't, but they have to actually find Jukes.
I'm surprised. I expected maybe a little bit more hearty of a rotation here, but granted, now that I look at the resources, no time, no real time, and for Jukes will have to bide their positioning there. Surprisingly, no one extending themselves much further from the Dragons. For need more bullets, down to a 1v1. We barely see the remnants of there. A huge success from G-Dolphin to keep this roster alive, but the third party, well, right around the corner.
Nice angle from Sherbert as well. Not enough time to stick the res in an actual position that has full coverage, so they'll be coming in to clean up a few kills, gather their resources, and if they find a third, great. If not, it's 2 more players removed and no days off. Just have to move into the next zone. This gravity cannon ahead of them still allowing a safe position for now.
Meanwhile, for LVH, we've seen their success early on, and now we need Jay Hanzo to come out on top against Red Dragon there. 1 member left standing. It's from Clutch Factor to another here as they find their success towards the west of our zone.
Jay Hanzo has been playing so well today, often using, as we talked about earlier, things like Skynades to control space, but in that interesting 1v1, actually using the piercing spikes to cut off a re-entry into the door. Activation time from the Catalyst is essentially nullified, and Jay Hanzo makes it a situation where he has complete control over how well this goes.
And in between Liffen and Vaves there, having a lot of their history in ALGS, it's nice to see that, you know, we get new talent that can keep up in the presence of, you know, me shutting my mouth. I mean, they're great. They were great. It was a good presence, and double wipe should be 6 points on the board for them. That will elicit some good success, and we miss out on Passion. Finding the boys caught with their pants down off of this height rotation. For them, this is a huge win that influences their endgame success.
And a nice bit of revenge as well, I might add, being the team that pushed off of Stormcatcher last game and then got killed by the boys as they came back. It's gotta feel nice to take the fight to the boys' home territory and actually find a win.
This is something that they now have complete stake and claim over. For 3 average kids, one of the more dominant positions that we saw play into Thunderwatch many a times last time around, but always a pain. A drop down in the lane, and as a result, the force of that singularity.
Everybody's going.
For 3 average kids, I barely know if it was a mistake, but it's gotta be a play that you need to take advantage of. A barricade that goes just a bit too short, but still the damage that puts them above the rest. Now a 2v1 situation. Take to the height of a grab lift, and from behind the double knockdown here, they'll find a 30-30 single shot. And
Surely. I was sweating a little bit. We only had 30 seconds to clutch that up, but 3 average kids do manage to find a res. They don't get the cleanest reset ever. Guts doesn't have a shield available to be dropped afterwards. It almost gives 3 dragons a way in. But Joyzy is going to disengage. Not a great spot to be in, despite how juiced that Hemlock is, because there's really no safe place to actually stay alive as we move into the next zone.
Now, no days off on the coverage of this southern angle here will be Shimani looking to pressure. I like the forward aggressive smoke there from Sherp to put them in the advantage for this next rotation, albeit once again, that energy barricade just giving the presence to move up, but not quite the damage they need. I believe that might have been defensive angles off of the fence line from that nade there. Sherp on the full wipe of their shielding, as barely able are Shimani able to foot their way inside this ring here.
Players finally go down as well. A really nice try to survive for as long as possible. With the solo, there was no way in. 7 squads left. 3 dragons likely going to be eliminated. Almost everyone else, though, has their spot. It's No Days Off and Shimani that are really needing to go at it. One of these squads is going to go down.
Big problem, though, the presence of getting up towards that height was only a second away before that zone closes in. There could have been a huge advantage to play from, and one that they might try to opt for again here. But when we look across the lane of Lightning Rod, getting up and putting pressure down like that can be a bit of a difficulty. I will say, Take-Toe has found themselves in good position here over towards this off angle, which will allow them to start putting damage down, as nicely defended at Barrage is going to be picked off by Pyre.
A real effective space to play on the outside, but as you say, this pylon providing crucial safety from nades that we've seen decimate squads earlier. Well, the wingman shots aren't connecting now. That juiced up Skull Piercer will be nice when it eventually connects, and with the amount of bullets left, there's a chance that this actually lasts you up until the end game for No Days Off. I think the big concern here has to be the rotation into Lightning Rod that they're going for right now across the zip line. With the smoke and the Arc Star, managed to make it happen, and this is now a game potentially winning spot that they can play, even on the low ground.
Funny enough, it's only elicited by the fact that average Funk Enjoyer, Falcon, Querney, Fulty push for the advantage against Shimani from this western side. As a result, it gives the opportunity over for the rotation for No Days Off to make that exchange across the zip line. For average Funk Enjoyers, now themselves with the 2 wipes found, are surprisingly able to find a very easily well-placed advantage here in the heart of this zone, albeit it isn't height. It's survivability.
There's certainly a way that you can get a few extra placement points, perhaps a little bit more KP out of a spot like this, but as you're alluding to, Zephyr, it feels like you are at the mercy of everyone, be it the squad from below that climbs up just that 1 level, or the squad from above that is increasingly hard-scoped on your corner. Passion do not want to let this go, and they have the angles to make it work. An Arc Star gets thrown in, forcing you to relocate, and Passion are going to go on the push. Another wingman in their hands as Yiku hits a 95 to open things up, and Falcons goes down, instantly full-thirsted. Average Funk Enjoyer is wiped out so quickly.
A perfect heady from the top of the grab lift there shows the advantage of playing from a height like this. For Passion now, where do they train their eyes? They set their sight upon the next team ahead here. Set Comportea live themselves still alive on our low ground alongside No Days Off. And once more, just a final remnants, it looks like, over there on the side.
Yeah, like,
I
look at
believe
three
3
average
average
kids.
Yeah.
Have the most dog water position they could possibly. This is so much pain and suffering for them, and finally they will be put out of their misery. But God, that was so rough.
I was about to say. I was like, wow, down on the edge, holding the fence line. That is. I mean, that's as tough as it gets here, and it's something to be now shared among the likes of Second Portea and No Days Off there as they play through it. This is, in my opinion, a lot of Passion's game to lose. I will say, though, the poll doesn't set up for a lot of the best presence here. Once they lose out on the defensive high ground angles, they'll be right in the heat of No Days Off, and depending how that damage is exchanged in the timing with Second Portea, we'll be seeing some opposite winners.
Oh my God, we got another team playing the outside of the fence line. This time, however, not as bad because, as you talk about, Passion is going to have to deal with another squad first. The point of playing the outside of the fence line here isn't to have great angles to swing from. It's literally just to delay. And with the Watson pylon, there's nothing that anyone can really do. You can't nade this squad on the outside, and No Days Off should just be able to chill until Passion have to fight Second Portea.
Meanwhile, I mean, they get a small second of an advantage in terms of survivability comparatively to this building that Passion and Second Portea share here. But, I mean, we're coming down to the minor finishes. Double remote beacons drop down, and the nades now coming here through from No Days Off. That finds the full shield wipe from Null, and they don't even have the time to exchange. Double Dark Veils down here as space has dominantly been created for Passion over on the side. They can't get the ultimates off with the barrier, but look at the fence line play over from the edge. Yiku has sealed the deal here for Passion. Adopt a wipe onto Plexus, but it is down for 0-0. It's up to Denze to finish the job and find the win.
Incredible play from Passion at the end, and EQ again from Wingman to the fence line opens things up for the team. God! Playing the fence line is pain. It was actually, and I'm not flaming No Days Off, that was a fantastic play from them, but man, watching EQ come over and see everybody straight in a line, it's free damage. It's so free. It's so free.
And I understand the presence of mind there from No Days Off, playing off the backside of that fence, putting themselves in that defensive turtle, especially with things like the pylon providing super successful. You've wiped the ultimate out, no bang, no horizon black hole to come through. You're feeling pretty darn good. The Dark Veils hoist themselves up, and you're showing a lot of presence towards Second Portea because they're in your sight lines. Things have been cut off on the other angle, and you make the assumption, well, the fence has provided the wall in itself. Instead, it is, yes, the veil that on its little bitty sliver of cover that YQ takes advantage of to put that damage out there. And surprisingly, it was actually more close than we thought. I would love to see some alternative perspectives potentially in the future when I get the chance to go back there, because I mean, Passion faced well and above more difficulties than I expected and could have potentially lost that had they not had that great opener.
And can I just say that this is why Apex Legends in a lot of ways can be a bluffing game, because in many other situations with many other teams, No Days Off hold that angle, and instead of both teams catwalling at the same time to save themselves, one of them just takes the fight. Like they just drop at the same time, and they take out, say, Second Portea, who are on the low ground, because realistically they weren't climbing up to take out Passion. One team chooses to play for second. We saw it just last game up against the boys, but it is all three teams working in concert that gives us this result, and man, is it exciting. When we get the chance, we'll go ahead and pull up the standings to see how those have changed after now 2 games being played out on Storm Point, and it's No Days Off that are up on top.
It is a big win for the likes of Passion that now puts them in the opportunity to contest for first, but No Days Off showing presence in both of these lobbies allows them to continually assume this position here, and technically it is only the additional 10 There are, I believe, potentially 9 that we see off of that last matchup there, but it's one that puts them above the boys, and one is that, well, technically, if this was Game 6, puts them in Pro League.
That's true, that's true. But we got a while to go for that yet, and certainly one more game on Storm Point. We'll get to catch that and see what the first half holds in store for us after a short break. We're back. And just in time for game number 3. That's right, we are going to finish off Storm Point right here and now. Before we do, Zephyr, it is important to check in with our standings, mostly because those provide information, and staring at your face, as lovely as it is, does not give me any information.
Dang, bro! I don't know why I'm getting roast. Like, you're not wrong, but at the same time, if I gotta listen to whatever that intro was again, it's giving plenty of information, son. All right, you just don't want to hear. You don't want to hear. I don't like. That's like the oh.
It's because I don't want to look at the disappointment on your face. I don't actually know what you're talking about, and I know that there's disappointment on your face again. But Zephyr, we have the stand.
You know me way too well. I'll tell you what. It's disappointment, not shared by many of these teams, but for some, definitely set ahead here. No days off, the boys, Passion, 3 average kids, and got Strike Pack on their way forward for our top 5, and plenty of other non-missionomers still looking for their chance to succeed. I'm talking Second Porteya, LVH here, Solo Q Goats, the Rats, and many more.
And we've seen this, actually. I'm happy you bring up Rats, because I'm going to put teams like Bacalao up there with them in terms of the opposite side of the coin from No Days Off and Passion. There was a 4-way tie in our second group of the semifinals yesterday at 52 points each for No Days Off, Rats, Bacalao, and Passion. All at 52 points in very different ways. But interestingly enough, it is Rats that are sitting there in 19th and Bacalao in 16th, both unable to break out of the bottom 5 after 2 games.
And, you know, it's something that comes back to represent a lot of the presence of those contests, especially for Rats. We know they're an effective roster. I mean, this is a team that made the qualification and split one Challenger Circuit last year into Pro League, then were picked up by Dynasty Esports to play throughout the remnants of EMEA. They've done it. They've been here. They're probably one of the oldest teams in this entire lobby to be playing as this three-man. Have not made any changes in almost what feels like the entirety of ALGS. Yet, they face difficulties on today's start.
And I think a big part of that is, well, rather, let me say, I think there are a lot of contributing factors to whatever's going on behind the scenes at Rats right now. Because, yes, it's the first 2 games of Storm Point, and there is some inherent variation in that. However, for a top team and for a Pro League team nonetheless, those are pretty darn low odds after 2 games to still be in the bottom 5. A big part of this has to be the meta shift that they're encountering, the style of lobby that they're encountering in the finals of a preseason qualifier, because Zephyr, you and I both know, having been through multiple iterations of preseason qualifier and Challenger Circuit, that the change from semifinals to finals is a big one in terms of how teams actually approach the game.
It is true. It comes down to a lot of the pressure that does build upon knowing that this is a day where, I mean, your chances of Pro League exist, right? And that form factor alone is a presence that is little to be found in terms of practice or scrims for so many of these teams that don't get the chance to compete in a regular ALGS format. And on top of that, only find themselves set up here. This is something that we didn't get the chance to check out last time around. Wanted in their exchange. Going to go for the 2v2 here now. I love this from Mometa. There on the side, gold longbow in hand. Has found presence of damage, but I would say not putting down the shots that elicit the entire success here. Revive stuck.
Now he's got a Mozambique, though. It's Jover. Mozambique finishes fights. That's it. It does feel bad that Wanted can't access the center, because as you talk about, Revive does go off, and it leaves after what was a nice amount of work put in by Lou and Mumet in a 3v2. Finish off on Lou Geek, and Wanted's best bet is probably to back off. With no support on their team, they can't do that and still play things out as a 3-person team. So it's got to be the Mozambique hero play, and unfortunately, it just doesn't.
Sadly, the exchange doesn't come out quite on top there, and for the likes of 3 Average Kids, it is now an early quick 3 KP that puts them above the rest. This time around, though, we're seeing all but a bit of the same, deja vu. It is, though, Rats that contest and hold the height here in Cenote, and now we get the chance to see if or how Red Dragon assault this position.
I'm getting flashbacks already. Sorvin is playing on slightly higher ground, but last time it was a gravity lift into decimation by Red Dragon, who this time seemed to be having a little bit more mobility, playing out towards the north, while Tolkien takes big chunks, and I can't even see from where, although I'm getting an idea now.
Coming through from the side there, it's a presence that puts them in the exact sight lines they need to take advantage of height. This exterior rotation can be taken advantage of, and more importantly than that, it does make it difficult to go for the full wipe and eclipse if you aren't getting those knocks, allowing teams like the Rats here to get these resets off. But this early on, in terms of resources, there isn't a ton to spare. A couple more good shots like that, and Dragon are in the driver's seat.
Plusha and ZH have been spotted. They're going to have to stall out the push coming through from the stairs, and they do. Hurrying back to the safety of their teammate Prestus, who's now actually able to cover them, even throw out the gravity lift to give them a little bit of height. How the turns have tabled.
And we are back to square one for so many of these rosters, but it is something that has allowed Red Dragon to close the gap and, well, push the Rats inside here. That exchange is going to come back to bite them, because this is something that we saw similarly that found them choked out on these stairwells in this last game. For the Rats, sitting at just 1 point here overall, this is the last position you want to be in before you work your way into World's Edge.
It's a really awkward spot. This is like playing tic-tac-toe, but with adults. Because,
What?
Hear me out, Zephyr. Hear me out. In a situation like this, you could just jump up onto the roof forever. But you gotta wait for one of them to fall asleep, to make a mistake, to take a gamble. It's a little disrespectful. And then you got 3 in a row, baby. It's simple.
I don't know what tic-tac-toe you're playing, but it seems to involve a lot of consequence in ways that I've never experienced. Finally, we see the Singularity exchange here from Red Dragon, but no real damage. That Radiant Transfer comes through to save Prestus there. An Energy Barricade on the inside, and exchanges go. Will find the damage necessary to pop Tolkien down. 2v3 around the corner, and a nice shotty almost finds the damage. But Rats find their way out. 3-0 for the likes of Red Dragon.
God, I am gonna be in so much trouble for yelling tic-tac-toe. But man, was it worth it. Red Dragon, very well-deserved win, and fortunately enough, as you alluded to, they are real close to the next ring as well, where teams are starting to stack up. Barometer is becoming an increasingly hot spot to visit, and this is a place actually very similarly to Lightning Rod where a lot of different teams can exist, and being on height gives you so much more safety from the teams that'll push you, not because of the angles necessarily that being on high ground gives you, but because there are limited ways to actually walk up, or in this case, zip up.
All right, and this is something more commonplace of a zone that players and teams may be used to here, especially if they've made their exchange on Storm Point previously. Obviously, the southern side of the map, especially towards the east, has made its changes for its playable space, but Barometer itself exists in a lot of the same way and same consequences that we've seen for its iteration here in ALGS for many a time. So, I look towards that, and also the curiosity of now we do have the first switch up here today. We've had 2 double zones, Stormcatcher and above, and that has allowed teams like No Days Off, Stay Healthy, and the boys to find their dominance. This is the first time that we start playing into the mix with Need More Bullets, 3 average kids, and well, se comporte here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll even include teams that stay around the middle of the map, teams that start over by Cascade, Command Center perhaps not so much, but as we say, Barometer, Pylon should be feeling a lot better, and many have already rotated in. Interestingly enough, Solo Q Goats have made their way in as well, starting over by Mill. We talked about this frequently in the past, but a very powerful POI in its own right. Well, Passion got something else cooking, unfortunately down to just EQ after last game's big win.
Yeah, set out of Sito Station here, faced their difficulties from what could have been rotations out from the west by LVH or potentially Average, and as a result, now are forced to go for that full reassumption there after big wins though off of this last game. They don't have 0-0 this time around. It is going to be incredibly hard as a duo to find their source of victory here as we talk about the final match of Storm.
Unusual to see a solo player this early into the game with a Prowler, but somehow that's just how ALGS happens sometimes. Solo Q Goats, they've got, as we talked about, the early rotation that has net them a very active position in this game, but taking a look at their minimap, the fact that this is pulling a little further into Jurassic is a really interesting adaptation and gives Se Comporta Ya a good look at this game, since they actually land in Jurassic and may have chosen to hold on to some of that territory.
Might. I do know we showed them a lot of presence towards the bottom side of that tower, so even if not directly in a controlling space, they are going to be one of the first teams that does have rotation back towards our Bamboo Island, or potentially up towards the nut, but no, instead it is No Days Off. Presence from the high north side alongside Stay Healthy has allowed them to find dominant presence here towards the entrance of Jurassic. Now, before we get into the midst of a lot of these teams and their presence, something that I do want to bring up, albeit I believe this one to be finishing out more towards this southern side, Jurassic is available. For the first time in the history of Stormpoint, zones can finish within Jurassic as well as the pylon outside here towards the east. With those zone exclusion changes, this does mean a lot of new presence for these teams who haven't really had the same advantage or even practice playing through these areas.
Stay Healthy are preparing for it nonetheless, maintaining control over all of the ingress points to the building that they hold these buildings, by the way. Now that we can end in Jurassic, way harder to play. Oh my lord, is it difficult to hold on to a spot like the one that Stay Healthy have when 2 or more squads are trying to siege it away from you.
Now, you say siege, and that's what I'll be starting to look at here as we talk about that northern side of Jurassic. Keep a common eye on both 202 and the boys. Now, 202 likely to show heavy presence towards the pylon, but the boys, a team that isn't afraid of pushing the limits or the metal. Once they know for a fact that that Jurassic rotation is in the clear, I can see them potentially putting it up to and against the likes of Stay Healthy towards that south side.
Solo queue goats hold on where they were earlier. I think everybody knows now that they've got to move out, and with the catalyst in front of them, that could be a little bit more difficult. Nate's going to get blocked by this door. Another one to follow it up on the cooldown, but with DiffQ getting chunked out from height, even if these nades find purchase, which they don't, Solo queue goats couldn't have pushed it anyway. They're going to have to take the zip line, likely play along this small bit of coastline, this beach that leads you all the way over to Jurassic.
I mean, it is still time and a half to make an exchange, and more notably than that, we do have evac towers in the presence of playing from the north that I still assume is doable for some of these teams, albeit a lot of that western rotation likely contested and already starting to take place as teams realize they need to foot their way in to that next position forward. For the likes of Solo queue goats, though, it's still an option. And that's the most important part of all of this here. Whether it be the coastline ahead or trying to play this one a little bit further back, I have the opportunity, especially with things, like I said, that evac.
It'll be a slow game for them. DiffQ just still looking for a little bit of poke. I imagine Evos at this point into the game, and perhaps a nice knock here and there. Time still plenty of it for many teams, including average funk enjoyers, who are taking this generous amount of space that they have and turning it into a much better position from which to gatekeep actively 2 teams that will likely need to fight one another, barring, as you said, evac towers or the like. Shamani do go down, and it leaves you in a pretty difficult position as Sekum Portaya, who wanted to try and push up to the high ground, but now have got to deal with the Rolling Thunder.
The presence of that movement there early from 3 average kids punishes the likes of Shamani, and that was Sekum Portaya looking to kind of third-party that advantage. And surprisingly, even though we do see the roster on the Eastern, no exchange yet. For Solo queue goats, it's pushing up against our Cold Revenge squad here, as they themselves broken and set upon something like that cat door. I mean, allows them the defensive option, and for what you've said earlier, Solo queue goats have no choice. Straight to the coastline, making their way across. Where do they go? Choke or straight ahead?
Yeah, DiffQ does make it happen first. Zerifer, however, does almost go down. Solo queue goats will need to take a small reset here. Neither team in a great position, but Solo queue in a slightly better one as need more bullets. They are in a pretty good spot right now. Not a whole lot of teams at their back, and a catalyst wall out to their east is keeping them safe, with Linkser getting shields healed all the way back up by their resident conduit and tryhard.
This is a problem, though, with wall now officially down here. That's going to show presence of mind over towards that western side as they start to get involved here, needing to finish the job on this fight to give them the ability to have more playable cover. Will be a huge toll in this fight, now literally sitting upon a crack here. And this is a situation that is always at its worst for rosters. When you're forced into that small corner choke, that's it. That's why I like this from Dolphin. They're taking big swing.
DiffQ takes down Folty. Another fight. 3 average kids go down. As need more bullets are actually coming up on that reality. Linkser again takes a big chunk. Cooldown should be almost done. Another shield refill, but need more bullets are not getting enough done as squads continue to fall around the map, just not here.
Surprisingly, it's the exchange ahead of them that is supplied by multiple squads that allow them to survive. For Solo queue goats, their rotation out from the northern edge of the coastline allows them to find presence in, well, it looks like the stairwell just to continue to survive. We tune back over to LVH 202, the teams that play on the outskirts of the pylons here. And for LVH, as successful as their early fight just was, 202 have been here earlier, they've been here longer, and now they've got to find themselves presence in one more fight ahead here. Taking tight for Ozzy. Owl will look around the corner, and just as the climb up comes through, it's huge damage that provides double knocks here for the team.
Ozzy Owl is he's just different, and he saves this fight for his team. Got Strike Packer down, but you've got 13 seconds to move into the next zone. It's not a lot of time, and it is not a very generous zone.
It's the KP that provides for their point scoring, but it's going to be the evac that gives them the chance to make space here. The same can be said, though, for the opposite side of the map. We look towards solo queue goats, and we're still trying to figure out this next rotation. The exchange for Bacala going to be just as difficult, albeit closer. Granted, I don't think they have the true island in play anymore, just the rocks ahead.
Now, Stay Healthy planned for this earlier on. You talked about them holding the choke that lies between Barometer and Jurassic, and they've still got control of it. With two teams needing to rotate in from Jurassic, there's a nice third party. There's a nice bit of KP there with only 7 teams left.
For solo queue goats here, the assault is nothing but a cleanup here for them. Shot in the back, though. This is going to be time that they have to spare on the outside of the zone. That will put Shiv down. DiffQ still left alive, and for solo queue goats, you have to hope for potential resets, but you can see that in the feed. Takoti already finding the drop, leaving just one member left alive, and surprisingly, Dia 202 have survived. Wow. Holding out on the edge. A dark veil gives them but a corner of space. For how long, though, I don't know. The likes of the 3 dragons are already moving in, looking to strike.
You can't coexist, even if for some reason you can ignore each other for this long. This may, yeah, but it isn't. Dumo 2 have to fight for their lives because 3 dragons are not going to take the 50-50. It's just down to Rakafaka and a nice ult. Does actually buy a little bit of space. Knockdown shields, however, not going to be enough. Let's Stay Healthy. Show up for the third party. Should clean house with this. The question for me is, does another team push up to them? 3 dragons get executed. 4 teams are left, but nobody comes up to bother Stay Healthy.
No one at all here. No days off, showing a lot of presence still from the likes of that initial pineapple and pill, and that's the reason why you see 3 dragons go down here. Need more bullets. Still left alive here over on the edge, albeit I just see Dolphin and Zerifer. There's Trihord Thor, though, on the edge, holding out that grav can. That's going to be that playable space for them as we talk about this zone close. Surprisingly, they hoist themselves in control of the most presence when we talk about these top 4 remaining squads left.
Should just be one player sat out on the rock, but need more bullets. Going to keep track of this either way. The move to play Roop is a nice one from Stay Healthy, allowing them to, in a way, force collaboration with no days off to take out the teams that lie around them. Solo Q Goat's last member is eliminated, and that leaves us once again with 3 squads in the classic conundrum of Apex Legends. How can you make this a no-win situation for at least 2 of them?
And for no days off, this is a win-win already on the board here. Getting into the top 3 is something that we have seen them do now 3 times in a row. We go double north now towards the south, and they are head above the shoulders of the rest. The question, though, is, can they find a win?
This Kraber could make all the difference. If Stay Healthy find a single knock, they could just decide, you know what? 3 kills is 3 kills. It's just as much as first place. On the opposite side, it does make their short-range engagements a little bit harder. Ooh. Not going to connect, but that was close. We're playing with fire.
This is difficult for a lot of these teams here. More, well, I say, for Stay Healthy and no days off, are 2 of 3. The presence of this zone not really going to be available for them when we talk about this pull in the next 29 seconds. For the likes of Need More Bullets, they are more dominantly set up for that pull, albeit having the cover that isn't as advantageous. But the cover isn't what matters anymore. I mean, at this point, you need to find yourself a home, some source of defense as you look for that rotation. You can see Stay Healthy already trying to eye out the likes of that grav cannon, but instead have now opted to position over for the east. The smoke was giving them the opportunity to rotate, but it comes at the cost of so much damage, Dia.
Now, Stay Healthy have effectively split the ring here, saying, nope, you 2 fight each other, but an answering Catalyst Wall gives plenty of time to instead fight them. Need more bullets are putting the siege down, and even with the Rolling Thunder starting to come through, nobody's giving up position. I'm sure that No Days Off are looking at this going, all right, I mean, if you want, next Catalyst Wall is about to expire, and we've got all the space in the world. Stay healthy. Just finding that out as they lose one. Atnam is down. They've got no Catalyst Wall anyway, so let's see what they can do.
Need more bullets putting down most of that damage, but this allows the likes of No Days Off to get that rotation up towards Grav Cannon for free here. Still, a single member left alive from Height, and it will be the push from G-Dolphin that tries to seal the deal, albeit coming at the cost of damage and just barely the corner of a position that gives them their chance to survive. They'll make top 2, but now they need to make this push happen in the midst of that smoke.
Need more bullets, have no nades, they have no way to control space, no walls, but a little tree lets them dance a jig and find a win. Need more bullets. Zephyr should not have been able to do that as cleanly as they did.
Straight through the smoke with literally no cover to their name. Dolphin, Tryhard, Thor, and Lynxer make a name for themselves in this game. The final win here on Storm Point for Need More Bullets. And I'll tell you what, I don't think they ever needed more bullets. The bullets were the only thing keeping them alive there in the end.
I whipped out an R99 and I was like, you might not have any energy ammo, but with 400 light, I think you'll be able to do just fine. It is so wild to see them play around little itty bits of cover, but just on the edge of the ring. And it happened not just in that final zone, but in the rings leading up to this as well, playing in the open ground out in the water to the south of where this zone ultimately ended. Things did go really well for Need More Bullets, and there's a reason that we had our eye on this team. Let's see how well they went as we bring up the standings.
It's a huge win, but it's only one that puts them in third. Then still, the conversation of today is no days off here, and you can tell they haven't been taking them. 50 points after 3 games. This is a scoring that is usually only eclipsed by some teams after 6. The 20-plus point gap between them, the boys, and Need More Bullets is something that is going to be truly challenging for these teams as we talk about World's Edge.
It is really incredible to see what these teams, and specifically, as you allude to, No Days Off, have been able to manufacture during our time on Storm Point. But it's halftime, folks, so grab yourselves a drink of water, perhaps a snack, because we have 3 more games today, as you said, Zephyr, on World's Edge to decide who is going to Pro League. We'll be right back. Game 4 is just about upon us, and we'll be jumping onto World's Edge, Zephyr, very soon. Let's bring up the standings real quick, because that whole information thing we talked about earlier, and mostly because I want to make a point about No Days Off. We did talk about how impressive their performance has been so far, and importantly, not unprecedented either. Yesterday in the semifinals, No Days Off were one of our teams tied for first in the second group. However, what's important to note is that they were one of the teams tied for first, and of all 4 teams tied for first, they technically were winning the tiebreaker with the least kills of anyone. Only 20 kills yesterday, 52 points, most of those via placement, and they seem to be continuing that trend here.
Jeez. Well, you're making a point, Dia. I'm making a tweet about them because they deserve it at this point. For the likes
if
of
only
Keiko,
I could tweet.
if only you could take the time to put these boys on the map for No Days Off. This stands. Is it offensive? Does this not stand as but a surprise to so many out here? I mean, I have heard of Plexus, Takeo, and Sherbert before, but seeing them perform in such a way off of the first Pro League qualifier within these 3 games is something that I've never experienced, and especially against the likes of so many of these rosters hosting so much history and so much presence in ALGS. I mean, that in itself is a new story being told.
It certainly is, and I'm excited to dive further into them, whether it be during the Pro League, where they seem to be headed right now, but hey, we might be getting ahead of ourselves. It is only 3 games after all, but regardless, their performance today certainly has put them on the map for a lot of people who, as you say, may not have had them there before, and I look forward to your tweet, Zephyr, and everybody can check it out at ZephyrCasts, I think is... I didn't miss anything. There's no underscore.
Thank you, bud.
Nice.
No.
I'm saluting. You can't see it because the camera's not up, but I'm saluting.
I'll tell you what, it's no necessary action. You guys support me as much as you do there as fans here of the ALGS and the preseason qualifiers. Oh yeah, and as our producers made mention of, all you can do is type in !casters in chat if you aren't already a supporter. But I will say, 3 games to go, Dia. 3 games that find themselves on World's Edge, something that we have told the tale of many times before. And if you at home can't tell the tale of it yourself, I'm shocked.
Yeah, we won't actually be commentating World's Edge. We're just going to be sitting here silently and watching.
That's right.
What happens,
it's your turn.
Everybody knows already. It's all. That would be incredible. We do, however, with this transition, mark an important change, not just in drop spots, which is going to change the game for a lot of teams, but also in the style of play that a lot of squads will favor. On Stormpoint, we do have teams that are more likely to take risks and perhaps go for something a little bit more kill heavy, as we talked about at the very start of the day. It's a map that rewards you being able to take a lead and run with it. So much of World's Edge competitive history is absolutely not that. So much of World's Edge competitive history is how quickly can we get to the center of the map, and then from there, how quickly can we survive.
Still, even with that said, I'm seeing a lot of the same, Dia. Still, the heavy presence of that conduit in exchange for those explicit 3v3s alongside things like that Revenant, and many of the comps not changing here. I mean, definitely, I agree with you in terms of play styles, right? As we do see a lot of heavy presence towards more zone on World's Edge, but nothing in terms of direct action. One to note, though, as I did see it, is that Second Portilla has picked up the Crypto, a favorite of Null, and technically just a favorite of the bleeding roster that is our friends over there.
You know, it's funny because as we're talking about this, right, you're saying, yeah, well, the compositions might not agree with you, perhaps the players might not, and it's funny how what is historically perhaps the best thing or the optimal thing to do can have so little influence. Many times, be it on preseason qualifiers, on Challenger Circuit, on whatever it may be, on Legend composition, sometimes what might be, in quotes, best just doesn't happen for a specific day because teams choose to play it another way. And no days off, while their position hasn't changed too much, the fact that they're up against 3 dragons right off drop is stopping them from an early rotation for at least a little longer than they would have been comfortable with over on Stormpoint.
Meanwhile, for the boys, they themselves also in an early exchange here, as we do see Tryhard Thor go down from Need More Bullets. And it isn't a shame. After big wins like that, the boys are looking to dominantly take control of the Harvester here, albeit even if they haven't secured the full wipe as of yet.
Already having picked up 1 win today in our first game, the boys are in no rush to actually put themselves on the map. That they've already done. What they need to do is make sure that that performance stays relatively predictable. Their first place is nice, but being able to do it again and again is what really matters right now, and they're doing that by cleaning up as many variables as possible. Thermite out ahead and an Argstar, but Babylon's is just getting clobbered on the way in.
Yeah, it's going to be something that's solved, though, by the hands of that Radiant transfer there, giving Babylon the chance to secure it out. Notably, this is not the likes of Need More Bullets there. Instead, it is Second Portea off of early rotation, whether it be on the outside or down from the staging. They are on their success, but that is bigger than anything I've seen thus far. No days off, out in 20th. This is your chance to catch on up.
It is crazy to see that 3 dragons are able to do that after what looked like a disengage from both sides. And as you talk about, the way that this changes the standings, or has the potential to change the standings, is even bigger. World's Edge and our swap of drop spots alone has already changed the story of the preseason qualifiers to one that now puts No Days Off on the back foot. And this game isn't even about them yet. In fact, it's not even about anything yet. Barely anything has happened in our first game on World's Edge.
I'll tell you what, for the fans at home, 50 points is the number to beat here. And if you're forgetting that scoreboard already, I'll take the opportunity to shout out our ticker at the top of the screen. As it makes its way across there, you will see those teams that set themselves up just behind the likes of that 50-point lead here from No Days Off. We're going to be at a disadvantage, but technically it is a big buffer. One that you never realistically want to see, but one that they have earned here, as the boys Need More Bullets, Passion, and more still have to eclipse more than 20-plus points to catch up.
Some of our teams, in fact many of them, have already made their way into Tree and the surrounding area to take advantage of what they imagine is going to be the best end game position. And I'll hand it over to their expertise, with plenty of options still being available. Spots over by, say, low ground of Lava Siphon. Still very much playable in an end game. Red Dragon struggling to make it out from their initial POI. Do have nice shields to back them up on a push, and Rats laying just ahead of them are on the receiving end of that. Let's see what this Peacekeeper can do. The first shot not going to connect, and Mania just goes down before doing any damage.
Oh, and for the Rats here, what is supposed to be your rebirth, your opportunity for success, is one that faces, well, what could be your end. Big damage in return, though, does delay, and arguably, they're still alive and well. For the likes of the Rats, it's just not a place you want to be put in anymore. This is a team that literally has nothing. 1 point after our last 3 games, and many a times necessary to make the exchange, but I swear, if that's that one of the final members off of the split, this just gets harder.
Essentially down to a solo. This kill is basically gone, but hey, check it out. We are pretty darn quick on the inside, and Red Dragon not in the easiest position. It does look like they're going to chase this for a little while, so we'll see how long they let their hubris take control of them. Vet on the inside, gonna heal up after some catalyst walls / doors get dropped. Wanted, hold on to their high ground. It's Thermite. Perhaps doing a lot of work on the inside, but the catalyst ult is Wanted somehow managed to weather the storm, but a third party is going to be all the more challenging.
Coming in, Passion here, hearing the shots, even if the fight hasn't finished out, are more than happy to put the damage down, but Denze towards the secondary height here is going to pay that price. It's just barely 0-0, finding the exchange onto Flinzon in the meanwhile. The question still yet remains, the fight not over, but yes, the opportunity to stick the revive while they have time here. This is going to be an exchange that allows them the chance to reset, and more importantly than that, allows Wanted the opportunity as well on the interior of this building.
The only person that isn't getting that opportunity, unfortunately, is the team being finished on the outside. Not going to feel particularly good off of a third party, but still technically being part of the game is going to have to count as a win for now. Passion take the other end of this building, and with an extra KP to go along with it, it isn't going to bother them too much. What is going to bother them is the fact they still have to share space with Wanted. And this problem will have to be dealt with, whether the zone pulls here or not.
I think this is our heavy-handed zone, though. I'm gonna place my Zephyr betting shit down as we see the end of the Rats finally accumulated here by the boys. It's not quite our friends the Dragons on the other side, but the reassumption of this position is finally sent out, and that's once again no points on the board for the Rats. But this does bring up an even more interesting conversation. Dia, can you remind me where the boys started?
Can I remind you where the boys start on this map or on the leaderboard?
On this map, yeah.
No.
If
go
not,
ahead,
I can tell you. Harvester.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Can you remind me where the zone is going?
I mean, it's basically just going south.
Now, ain't that about a... I mean, that is...
what are you actually getting at?
Bro.
That it's weird that... Okay.
No, no point to you in that sense. What an edge rotating team. Like that, this goes above edge playing. Edge playing in my eyes is playing the zone on the cusp of your rotation and working your way in fight to fight. Mm-hmm. The boys are literally negative rotating as far as the eye can see to accumulate their success. I mean, from Harvester directly out east, they show no signs of slowing down to accumulate their points.
That's certainly true, and the fact that they are all the way out in the distance is I hesitate to call it purely optimal play. They're doing very well. The fact that they're out there right now is a little strange, and I want to see what they do next game. Yeah.
There's a reason I am as dumbfounded as I am. All right, I mean, we both know for a team that is as close to the top as they are, being in the exchange to go that far out, you have to be so confident in your prowess as a fighting team to even give up rotation. Because, I mean, you talked about it at the beginning of World's Edge. There's dominant towards zone.
Mm-hmm. I think a big part of this has to be that, as we talked about, the difference between optimal play and Challenger Circuit's preseason qualifiers often comes down to one team or multiple teams' confidence in their ability to outskill other teams. And that's what the boys seem to be running off of, and it isn't just on this map, it's on Stormpoint. The fact that they've taken this mentality from Stormpoint, that albeit is a little bit more common there, and transferred it over to World's Edge, could be a good thing. Could be what wins them this game and gets them so many more points and ultimately takes them to Pro League. Or it could be a misread. And it'll be up to the rest of the lobby to actually decide what that's about. Does everybody shake hands and actually sit in zone and play nice, slow Apex Legends, high probability Apex Legends? Or do we play a little bit more fast and loose and let a mechanical team like the boys take advantage of the fights that they are very much ready to have?
I'll tell you what, Dia. If they come out on top of this, I'm renaming them the Big Thickums. All right.
The Big Thickums.
That's right.
That's actually like if the boys were a Pokemon, that would be their next evolution. Is the Big Thickums.
Boys evolve into Big Thickums. We'll see. We'll see if they get the necessary XP in this game to elicit the chance to become the Big Thickums as they make their rotation. But so many of our other teams quiet here. It is a lot of what we usually see towards the remnants of World's Edge, and it does lead me to believe in kind of our setup to this conversation that yes, there is beginning to be a little bit of that handshake. Teams are showing more dominant presence towards the positions that they know this particular map plays into, and as a result, less squads are getting into the position to take advantage. And this is already, Dia, I mind you, round 3. You know, we talked about Stormpoint in some of our early excursions. Getting to these end zones, we were looking at 6, 7, 8 squads left alive in zone 4.
Yeah, this is one of the games where we can play this a bit slower. Oni going down does mean that Need More Bullets get a chance to pick up a kill with still a squad above them. As they risk, G-Doll almost falls on the way in, gets a quick heal off of Conduit. Pushing up this high ground takes a little bit more, and they're being sandwiched in on the side. This may in fact be 2 different teams. Need More Bullets going to quickly disengage with a nice catalyst wall to back them up on it as well, cutting off sight lines to the rest of the squad and ensuring that they get a full reset.
And for Linkser, it's finding a position that gives them the chance to get a successful full reset here, given the fact that on the interior of Lava Siphon, it is another team. They cannot contest for that space safely, especially with round close, and as a result, position themselves in one of these carts. And I'll tell you what, Dia, I never like it. I hate the cart bet. It is difficult to play out of in an exchange that can be very easily punished if you allow a squad to get a closer rotation on top of you. For the boys, though, this is the challenge that awaits them. Late rotations, long-winded, out from the edge, and now in the position where they have to fight here. Where do they present? Well, nothing but a knock.
Babylons did get the grav lift out before they went down, but doesn't even get used by the rest of the team. The boys, one step further back from evolving into the big
the kids.
Cookums. The kids, though. That's what, you know what? That's where we were going the whole time. That's where I was going, certainly. LVH do still have an angle on this high ground if they want to take it, but the fight isn't there, that chaotic up there yet. Let's see how this evolves.
LVH, by the way, LVH, they're more than happy to just sit here. I mean, they're going to get involved once the damage is down and this exchange is taking place, but for them, they want to elicit the best success by not getting or pushing the metal as fast as they can. For Need More Bullets, it's big wins that leave Red Dragon out, but coming at the cost of height behind them, this push that's already assaulting from behind the likes of that knockdown shield. I hesitate to believe that they'll survive 3 dragons this time around. Making their exchange for the push will send them out in 13, even after big wins.
Very quick exchange of kills happening over in Lava Siphon. While a res happens out in Tree. Zeraphor gets Diffq back into the game. As on the low ground actually manages to do it successfully without going down, giving Diffq the chance to drop themselves. Solo Q Goats, playing on very thin margins, should be able to find this squad wipe.
Shiv there, surviving just almost barely by the skin of his teeth. It's going to force Solo Cute Goats down to find at least the return knock on to Klesa here, opposite side. It's difficult, though, making the exchange, especially with that energy barricade. That is a massive zoning tool, preventing teams from getting the full wipe, the full fight. Drop a thermite down, and they're going to see if they can maybe elicit the potential to look for that revive on Shiv. Trifold and Liv, though, also on the opposite side, now taking the height to try to play for the stairwell. It's a big beam that does whiff out, but it forces Solo Cute Goats down nonetheless there as the knockdown comes through, and Liv, positioned from behind, barely survives by the skin of their teeth, and Ty able to get down and play for defense.
But gets down, plays for defense, hits flesh, and still doesn't find enough. Got strike back, and Solo Q Goats are neck in neck, and the zone still allows them the space to keep fighting. The fact that nobody else has come in yet is a miracle, even as shots start to rain in from afar.
It's a good setup there from Ty, and now it is 2-0-2. Those shots raining in from afar, like you said. And when it rains, Dia, it pours for the likes of Solo Q Goats down to their final member. Only second to survive here, as especially we look towards the rest of these squads on what will be necessary rotations. LVH's Jay Hanzo looking for their own setup and success as a duo alongside Liffin have lost out on waves. Granted, potentially on the low ground, they need to see how they can rotate out of this one, or at least stick for revive after playing from a knockdown.
Yeah, Res still may be available, as you talked about the knockdown being a big determiner here. The gold still up. Vafe's getting back into the game. Could change everything. LVH
21.
are going to have to rotate very soon. Up towards 3, up towards... It's so low to the goat type. It's going way too long. Strike back or solo Q goats. Let's hope one of them has made a recovery, because we're about to be playing King of the Hill again.
We look towards the majority of these rosters. The boys stay healthy. LVH, 3 average kids, players, all of them from the outside of this East, looking for presence to play from. It does look like Solo Q did went down the mean howl. LVH on their rotation towards the outskirts are happy to find damage down, punish, and find that knock onto Faco. Babylon and the boys relegated down to become the babies.
LVH not in too much trouble, as they've got a brief moment to pop a battery, but Zone still at their backs is going to mean that these smokes being fully on cooldown, Liffin unable to expend another, does not give them any safety. A big crack comes in for them. See how far they make it. Respawn following this up makes it so the Strike Packers have all 3 members back in the fight, and LVH gets shot in the back. Vapes turns around, doesn't hit the head, he doesn't hit almost anything, and has to dip into the zone to try and find the kills. Has a shield swap available. Liffin, Res gonna go off. Remember, this is old knockdown.
Able to get the crawl in off the backside of that zone, and surprisingly, it is going to be Buckalao that does get dropped out here as a result, but now players with their rotation from the outside of that building looking to take advantage. LVH have only seconds, but to spare here. It is only, though, the extent of Kaza making this rotation towards the outskirts, and it isn't actually looking as successful, as now those smokes no longer available put them in direct sightlines, and LVH have made reset.
Kazakh has to swap blue for red, or rather, red for blue as well, making their fighting potential a little bit less potent. However, this nice 3-person swing nets them the first kill on Nisa, gives them a leg up in the ensuing battle, as they now have central control of this building.
For Shamani, forced into the opposite side more directly, the players are now dominantly, like you said, in control of the center here, albeit Shamani still a thorn in their side. And wow, even 202 making that exchange up towards the opposite end, and LVH, after being stuck on the low ground of Tree, have opted to play the height here to try to control the exchange. They give up that kind of counterplay sightline from Tree.
This is a great spot for LVH to be in. They are the last team that's going to have to engage with anybody, only having to focus on low ground that doesn't have any autonomy over them. Huge damage thrown in by Jay Hanzo, who, if I may say, has played wonderfully so far today. Jay Hanzo is on point.
He's on point, but they've still got to survive that off angle. It's going to be that final drop there from LVH, now knowing that they're at that disadvantage. Those Sky Nades coming out, ringing true from the likes of Liffin here as they look for their success, but keeping quiet. They want to control this door, and they want to make sure that when they need to beam, they've got them supplied.
It's going to be a big problem, though. Rolling Thunder could shell shock them a little bit. Be all right as they swing again. 3 people strong on the team inside. Take control of the door with Catalyst, but instantly that gets broken down. And LVH, well, they're going to follow. Catalyst, while not able to save them, and the players continue to dominate these short, tight swings, leaving them in the top 2 squads on the wrong end of a Catalyst wall, but Jukes doesn't care, swings right through it, takes the 1v3 and goes down to 202, who come up from the low ground in our first game of World's Edge.
For 202 there, it's the big win that puts them on the board for what feels like the very first time. But I'll tell you what, Dia, this isn't the first time we've seen them previously in our last Challenger circuit. They've made the exchange, they've made the improvements, and they're work their way back into it. I'll tell you what, in that last game, the thing that makes me the most impressed with their control, as we didn't get to see it, was they were playing tree building. They were holding out that western side, playing from presence, and they were the first team to make the bets, make the exchange, and play back over towards tree direct and walk their way in, knowing that they didn't want to get caught up in the stack.
Yeah, they're one of the only teams that, as you say, doesn't play for control of the height, but instead goes, you know what, we'll fight off of low ground. We'll fight the people that say haven't actually managed to get here yet, and then from there, see what's left on height. It works out for them. It works out really well. So well, in fact, I want to take a look at the standings and see whether they've managed to put themselves into contention, and they have, for a Pro League spot.
It's something that pushes them up all the way from 15th to now what I believe is an incredible second here. I am curious. I do want to make sure that's right as we make our way through the rest of this, but if that is what I mean, if that's what we're working with right now, 202 coming off the back end of an incredibly dominant lead off of that last game, now, like you said, in the position to make that change, in the position to potentially win it.
I'll tell you what, Zephyr, we'll have plenty of time to confirm it, as we are going to take a short break. We've got 2 more games left to send someone to Pro League, so grab some water, and we'll find out who it is. All right, we're back. Zephyr, that was a classic. You're right. You're right. We're back for game number 5, as we are about to jump in again to World's Edge, and we did get a pretty darn big game out of 202 last game. And you said we wanted to check, we wanted to double check and confirm, so let's bring up the standings and see exactly where 202 landed themselves. And as it turns out, Zephyr, it is correct. They are in second, and wow, that is a lot of points in one game.
That is, for those who weren't paying attention, 202 was at 12. And that's why I said what I said, not really on the board, down in the bottom 5. They managed to put up 17 KP alongside that win in that game to now position them in second. And this is I mean, it is insane from the likes of this roster to find success like that. It's kind of crazy too, because I actually had the chance to talk to Ozzy prior to these PLQs, and he talked a lot about how their representation of the last Challenger Circuit, where they did not qualify, was nothing but a fluke. After being and having some difficulties against some specific rosters, and on top of that, not having all of their players due to some vacations, now coming at this with the head held high, strong practice, a bit of switch regarding their fragger and anchor, and the utter confidence that they deserve to be here. This is the first time that those words have rang true and have actually represented with the points to follow.
They very quickly leapt up the leaderboards. As you say, huge game with the first one on World's Edge, and this first one being theirs. We'll see how far they can continue that, because crucially, these leaderboards are so much closer because No Days Off died so quickly. We don't actually know how they play World's Edge yet, or if they'll get the chance to play World's Edge at all, because if they don't, teams like 202 and the boys are coming for their #1 spot.
And it is something that is going to be very hard to achieve and something to eclipse here. But I'll tell you what, between the boys and No Days Off, a bit of an egg in this last game. One of the first times that we've seen a lot of the weakness come from these two rosters. From No Days Off in their struggles up against their initial contest against the Dragons outside of Monument, to the boys. A hyper-aggressive playstyle finally taken advantage of when we talk about their rotations here on World's Edge.
Yeah, this was a question that we had as well, right? You jump into your first game on World's Edge, your first game rather on World's Edge of the finals, which is an even more important distinction. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And for the boys who did pick up at least a couple of kills earlier, they are going to need to reevaluate whether this playstyle works for them. If they come back to playing Edge, hey, maybe they've decided that isn't what they needed to change. But I'd like to see them experiment a little bit more in a finals lobby with a more conservative, and I will say, Zephyr, especially to the other teams, a more respectful playstyle.
Yeah, it's something that I feel like can find its benefits on the maps like Stormpoint, where you have the advantage to get those splits and take the direct 3v3s, but where teams are more adept at finding the rotations and having a better analysis of playable space on a map like World's Edge that really hasn't seen any changes. That shows its weakness here. So I, like you, I would love to see the exchange. I know this is a roster that can, in the best of situations, put up the numbers that push them above, right? And put them, 29 points per se above the rest of this lobby. But at least for now, with the precipice of Pro League upon their tongues, take a little break.
Yeah. Two more games. We got time to take breathers in between. I hope we had time for all of you to get water. And I tell you to get water between every game, because dehydration is the enemy. So, as we prepare for this next round, Passion going to be picking up the Watson again, and everybody going to be ready and raring to hopefully bunker down and stay chill until we get those banger fights like we did in Shri late into the game. We'll see where the zone takes us this time, as Southern zones are a particular favorite of World's Edge.
Well, as our dropship makes its way through for our penultimate game here, we'll take a look and see if these teams fare all but the better, especially as we take a look at Monument and Harvester. No Days Off being the big one that I look at, obvious towards Monument, but Need More Bullets was in good presence of play off of what should have been big successes, but faced their difficulties early on against the boys here.
I want to see what the boys end up doing. His Peacekeeper Mozambique, otherwise known as the Giga Chad's loadout, is going to have to somehow find a way up to height, and hopefully a way to taking somebody down. The center of Harvester's already been looted, and the opening damage from Clemmy actually should be healed. Very recoverable on the other side of this, despite how devastating it first appears.
The boys choking this one out similarly to what we saw from this last game, taking advantage of this door, and in minutes to spare, Babylon with the double chunk on the PK here. It's the push through from Clemmy, though, that pays the price, as Linkster will be knocked now into a 2v2 scenario, playing ring around the Rosie in the corners here. I won't admit, though, a pocket full of posies as Babylon is facing difficulty. Trihorse Thor with their own PK. It's up to Facco to find the exchange in the smoke. Hemlock in hand, stuck to reload behind the knockdown shield. An exchange that, in the face of a bullet, sends Need More Bullets home in 20th.
And the boys picking up a really nice cap, as they've now got an additional 3 points to start this game. Harvester, not really known for its early third parties either, so they've got plenty of time to heal up and move on. First ring has already revealed itself, and while they don't have access to figuring out where the second one is, they will have the opportunity from Harvester to interrupt other teams who may be on their way.
I'll tell you what, I haven't seen the feed elicit any exchange of issue, which means no days off are still in it. And for all these other rosters that come off of the heat of that last game, getting the chance to catch back up like 202, this is an opportunity now for them to continue to put points on the board. And so I bring up 202 explicitly too, just more importantly because as we look towards this zone, for a team that starts in Lava Fissure, they have the perfect opportunity to find a potential to win here.
Yeah, you literally just stick around and let other teams file in around you. The building that 202 currently hold, very annoying to push, and especially as this gets more crowded, an unlikely spot to even find your way into because of the amount of teams that will surround and provide, in a way, peel for 202. We still got a couple other squads moving up from the bottom of the map, though. Wanted definitely being mirrored by squads coming from Launchpad and Dome, while Secom Portaya are one of few teams that have managed to actually set up in Lava Fissure already. And you talked about the Crypto, are also running a Wraith.
Jeez, I mean, hey, compositionally, this is as old school as it gets when it comes to the likes of World's Edge, and Noel's going to take advantage, pop on over with the EMP there to face some damage and elicit the information. No real rotation from this squad, but I'll tell you what, it is a position that I expect to see last quite a bit here for this roster. I ask you, Dia, do you think Noel gets notes from Kashera? Do you think Kashera whispers in his ear and is like, this is how you play Crypto, bud? Or do you think it's the other way around? Does Noel as the coach, do you think Noel is he the OG Crypto? Is he the one that has, I don't know. Wow. Okay.
I like to think that all Crypto mains have a database on the dark web, and they speak to each other there. But it's like it's all. There's a word for it that I don't know because I'm not a Bitcoin guy. But you know how they all have like the encryptions that don't let you know who the other people are. They don't actually know who they are. So like Kashera gives Null notes, but he doesn't know. He doesn't know that it's
and
Null
does the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They all collaborate.
I like to think they have telepathy. There's only like 5 of them in the world, so I think they all share like the same crypto brain.
Yeah. I see that. I definitely think their thought patterns go. Yeah, I just think that there's no way that you can play crypto for a long period of time.
Does Null have hair? Hold on, does Null have hair? That's a question.
That's something I don't know.
Null, you'll find this somehow, some way. Someone will send this to you. Let us know if you have hair. Thank you.
Yeah, if anyone knows if Null has hair, I'm going to be checking Twitch chat in 10 minutes. So just hit me with the Null has hair or Null has no hair.
All right. I'll tell you what, some of our teams starting to get a bit spicy as they're on the hair of potential elimination here. Red Dragon, a squad that has gotten aggressive in the past, especially from what we saw in their early contest against the Rats, face a bit of their difficulty making the cross and exchange. Granted, nothing yet. For what was assumed to be kind of that edge push from the likes of Red Dragon is pretty much drawn out to a standstill. And it once again kind of exemplifies what we usually see from the likes of World's Edge.
Yeah, teams that are a little bit more conservative. And Red Dragon, plenty of time Not too much to craft for Prestis, I suppose, but the rest of the team is going to be hard at work down there, making sure that their Evos are nice and juiced up for the fights to come. We've got a respawn heading in over at Lava Fisher. Let's see what comes of that.
Most of our teams have made the exchange towards the likes of Lava Fisher. I am noticing one unusual rotation by the boys in Wanted there. I don't know if the Wanted are sharing literally the lick of absence of space that allows the boys to get this rotation off, or that they just barely get away. I'm only seeing the 2, which leads me to believe some difficulties. Meanwhile, for 202, heavily in the presence of Lava Fisher, this does look to be the one that caters itself a little bit more dominantly towards the west or the northwest here in comparison. Does sometimes have the potential to play back towards Countdown as we start looking about over towards that open-ended building. But I mean, for teams like Solo Q Goats and Second Portea, these are positions that should elicit really good top 5 endgame performances.
Yeah, great flexibility from the position of Solo Q Goats, especially with the high and low ground you can play inside of Lava Fisher. And that's with, as you say, the very low likelihood that they've even got to move, which should be doable from that spot as well. Cold Revenge taking over this hillside. There's just a few shots thrown in, but this is one of the teams that was mirroring Wanted earlier and still may come up on the combination of them and the boys that lie ahead. 1 minute left on ring close, and Cold Revenge have control of the choke leading into staging.
It's something that, albeit is control, it does leave me asking regarding their future plans here for the success of this roster. The boys themselves are in the head of their own southern position that it once again puts them further away from zone than before. Granted, with the exchange to potentially craft this banner up off of a round 2. I now understand Clemmy will be brought back into this one here off of this rotation, and they should be able to play out from edge, albeit from very, very weak potential. And for what was such an incredible start for this roster today, it once again has been plagued by the time and positioning of how they present on World's Edge.
Maybe one of the beneficiaries of one of the changes going into this season, which is that you at least respawn with the weapons you last had and the armor you last had. So, depending on exactly how that went down for the boys, could be not. It's still a big setback. Could not be a devastating setback for them. Still got plenty of time to make your rotation in, not because the ring is going to be patient, but because it is only round 2, and you can still out-heal round 2 for a little while. The Rats will make this pretty difficult for other squads trying to rotate in, and the Rats, who desperately need the points, may very well get over-aggressive for kills.
Tolkien there with a very early Radiant transfer backing up this Revenant. That should give him the confidence to maybe show a little bit more presence over here on the side. With Leap in hand and Forge Shadows ready to go, this is the push that they might need up against the players here, as they themselves are still looking for the exchange. That Dark Veil, though, only seconds to truly work with, is now down. Their smoke is the only defense they truly have.
Turboed up Havoc can do a lot of work, but Tolkien isn't quite hitting the shots, and Rats likely need to think about relocating into the zone, because they're not getting a whole lot of work done out here.
I hate to say it, but for a combination of Conduit Revenant, I don't think I enjoy the playstyle that comes with it from the sightlines of the Rats. Granted, yes, you'll have the dominance of the shielding to work with, but something that usually this combo is more known for, and the reason why you have the presence of the pickup, is that heavy aggression, right? Kind of closing the gap, having the confidence that you have that extra additional 150 plus HP to work with when you look for the exchange. As a result, these will be 2 ultimates no longer available. As we take a look at that map, they are technically gate-kept here by the likes of the boys on their rotation through staging, and even getting further forward, Shimani and Average Funk Enjoyer towards both sides of the south. Neither team truly in presence.
Are they ratting? Yeah, they are. I mean, on highlights, we can tell boys just crouch walking around, don't get the initial knock as players go down, but instead get traded out themselves. Rats have not taken that much damage, and with this gravity lift, Tolkien should be able to avoid the majority of it. It's going to be a clean wipe on the boys. And Rats, for their part, played that well. It's going to feel pretty bad, though, to go hard edge Rat and come up with nothing.
This is something for the Rats now to try to figure out and solve. A lot of the presence of this noise has given away their position, for they are loud Rats. That's something notable, though. Over towards the side here, Second Portea with solid positioning seems to be further south than we expected here. Cold Revenge, or many of our teams, my apologies, not Cold Revenge. This is instead what I believe to be YQ and them for Passion, who set them up towards Lava Fisher. So, still in the same positioning, albeit taken away. Something to note, though, as we get a look at this next zone, is that it is the one that pulls further north. It leaves a lot of the presence of Lava Fissure no longer as a truly available playable option. Instead, plays towards the open-ended nature of the rocks out here towards the north. A very, very difficult zone to assault, which usually leaves us with only 4 to 6 teams left standing as we get towards our round 5.
Yeah, normally you'd even see a little bit of the Raven in play up to the north in a zone like this, but the fact that it still slightly favors Lava Fisher is going to leave a lot of squads without a real place to bunker down that is a building that does provide them safety, or at least has cover from multiple angles. You're going to be open to at least one. Things like Catalyst and Bangalore will be very important. Well, the average Funk enjoyers take a fight of their own. First knock is found by an Arc Star. It seemed like they were coming out on top with Querny on 50 HP and No Days Off starting to come in. Maybe both of these squads are losing. Maybe nobody wins.
Well, for No Days Off, they're at the advantage of an already found knock here with the full wipe back as they jump through the Dark Veil. They'll find the response onto Lou Geek. 7 Mania down as the push comes through here from Wanted, and for No Days Off, it is another elimination that's going to keep that point score challenging on the leaderboard.
Now that they've gotten the additional kills, you're right, their acceleration is going to make them all the more difficult to catch up to. Continuing to look for a few more as well. Behind the knockdowns, they've got more kills to pick up. Plex going to take a swing through the smoke with a Digi, no less. Essentially, on Bangalore, that's the ideal play. No Days Off. Don't find another kill after that. Rats go down off screen. We've got 12 squads left. No Days Off, needing to rotate up with very little time to do it, very little space to actually call their own.
For No Days Off, like you said, it is going to be the distance to cover for so many of our other teams, though, left with position to play from. We look towards Red Dragon of many of the rosters who dominantly host themselves within at least our final zone. It is only, though, LVH who even comes close to matching the presence of play in the next upcoming, I would say, position. Everyone else still left with many questions, especially with how to make the cross out here of Countdown, and more importantly, Lava Fisher between Solo Q, Passion, Stay Healthy, Shimani, and our winners from last round, 202.
I can't help but laugh at the fact that 3 dragons and 3 average kids are fighting right now for their next rotation in. It just feels a little bit one-sided from a purely name standpoint. This could be one-sided though. Solo Q Goats get a big opening frag. Catalyst re-secures the door, however, making it impossible for Solo Q Goats to actually go on the push. And despite their frags, you literally, Catalyst is so good!
Yeah, and for that, the Solo Q Goats now have to look ahead here. They opt to play towards the opposite side, covering their backs appropriately, knowing that these teams are going to be rotating in from the south. They themselves, though, have to be careful here. One bad misstep, and you'll see the presence of LVH just as quickly, though, as this team is beginning to close the gap from both sides. Solo Q Goats have to pick an angle and stick with it. A drop onto Zerifer, and it is Vapes who shows presence. LVH from the opposite angle as well presents alongside Stay Healthy to send Solo Q Goats out.
And with Stay Healthy taking that first move, they're the ones that now get to play defense out of this very powerful position, turn around, and while they don't immediately find a knock, Nisa is down. Stay Healthy have plenty of shield swaps on these bodies, and hold on, putting Liffin back where they came from.
I'll tell you what, that's going to be a big one for Stay Healthy there. LVH still looking for their own rotation. Granted, Red Dragon, the true team to truly watch out for here, holding complete control of this building. This is going to be something typically and sometimes usually shared as we talk about the height in the fence line itself. But for so many of these teams sharing the stacked rotation away from Lava Fisher, I mean, that's difficult. For the likes of Stay Healthy, LVH, and 202 over there on opposite angles, getting across without getting eliminated is a true challenge.
LVH's focus could be on just playing the north side of Lava Fisher, not contesting for these bridges, not contesting for the big building, but playing out literally to the very northernmost side across this small chasm that covers a walkway. It's their biggest chance of being able to, I'd say, be ignored by everybody else, even the squads that are flying in as we speak. We'll see what they do, but LVH have a big decision to make.
Tough for them here as Got Strike Pack themselves have made the exchange from that rotation and now set themselves up in this building like I was just discussing there. Able to survive off the back end, that black hole with that presence. Now they turn their attention back towards 202, towards this south side around the corner here, and even set up the Sky Nades that might push them back. Granted, a perfect Dark Veil timing allows them to create their space on the edge. The question is, what do they do with it? They need to clear out their backside so they have the confidence to close the gap on the fence line. For LVH, they've been listening to you straight to the north here now, closing the gap and covering the team coming out of Countdown.
They've made sure to take control of the walkway. These Watson fences making it a bit hard to push. We're about to find out if there is a pylon, and it doesn't look like there is, and there certainly is not, as we get burn damage starting to come in. Base does go down, however. A reset is necessary. Without access to high ground, Dark Veil's the only thing that makes this even slightly possible, and they're still going to be pushed up on. Flesh damage is found above. Hanzo takes the big swing, taking out Passion. With the Rolling Thunder to back him up, LVH get a reset on the low ground.
Meanwhile, for Strike Pack, they have been found out in tow here as the exchange has finally come through from none other than Bacalao, a team that hasn't really been available in most of these end games, and as a result, are confidently able to pick up the wipe there and now play from presence of the height of this building. My question, though, Dia, also important here, is as we look towards the pull of this zone, it doesn't show a lot of presence back towards Lava Siphon whatsoever. Most of those teams there forced to rotate. Instead, it's this building, and more importantly, LVH, who have themselves a happy positioning.
There is going to be a big fight up on high ground. 202 instantly get beamed. That's just, you know, that's just reality, and unfortunately, it's going to happen likely again. This is not the ideal angle, and it's what makes me thankful for LVH having gone to the low ground, and they now even peek back down onto the low ground to see if they can get involved. 202 are melted 3 ways from Sunday, and Bacalao hold on to high ground knowing that LVH are on the low. Can they identify that LVH are one of their biggest threats?
On the low ground, they make that rotation to elicit that exchange there as we talk about our top 3. Bacalao on top, LVH from below, and inside the Dragons, who have been playing here all along. Bacalao have one of the most dominant positions, but LVH have made the climb back up. They are going to lose out on their cover, I believe, the first of these 3 rosters. Can they make the exchange from this height to a playable space, or will they be shot out from above?
A big part of this is going to come down to their use of smokes and catalyst walls. Catalyst wall, one thing they do not have. A little bit of cover provided by this rock, but not a safe place to climb up. We've seen LVH play whack-a-mole before, but never in a higher stakes situation than this. Up goes Liffin, somehow surviving all the way till up and underneath Red Dragon, and Hanzo is still alive. Still somehow making this work. Red Dragon don't want to push. Nobody wants to push.
Nobody want to make this exchange here. Red Dragon on the outskirts, LVH just alongside them, and Bacalao setting up the fence lines from above. Even just one of these would be so detrimental to your endgame performance. That's why you see so many of these teams focusing where they see best fit, and at the last moment with their drop down, Bacalao are a free champion.
Wonderful play from Bacalao as they managed to drop down just in the nick of time. As you talked about, Zephyr, these Watson fences, the siege that they put down was incredible, but they weren't here the whole time. Bacalao were a late arriver that, yes, picked up a few kills. I can't help but wonder how close this has gotten them to that elusive Pro League spot.
Ooh. It is something that we'll have to take in consideration as we move over to those standings here soon, but for Bacalao, I mean, it is absurd to be put in the situation that leads to an advantage like we just saw. no presence from the outside that forces them off of that roof early, right? And I mean, I cannot begin to tell you how perfect of a zone pull that has to be a Watson able to fence out from height. To fence out from positioning on height, to have literally top to down fences. I mean, that rarely ever happens there, and it's something that they take advantage of that allows them to very confidently walk into that position and take away that win alongside, I mean, really good pacing of play there.
Yeah, a big part of this also comes down to the geometry of what's underneath them, not just because of Watson's reach, but also because, well, you can't stick around there forever, but I could talk about endgames forever. We could talk about endgames forever. Let's bring up the standings and talk about what really matters, which is where everybody is heading into what is now going to be our last game. No days off. Hold first place still after dropping that 0 on our first game on World's Edge. At the comeback, picked up 9 points. LVH just behind them and tied with 202 make these three squads some of the scariest heading into that final game.
And even with, I'll say, 14 points on the board there, Dia, that separates them from first, it's far from over. 14 off the back end of a win, very possible. Even in second place with some great KP, or third, even easier. For the likes of 202 and LVH, the potential of Pro League is right there.
One last game determines who the first team to qualify into the Pro League will be. We're going to take a very short break. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Get yourself some water and please buckle up because this last game is going to be a wild ride. All right, folks, we are back just in time as the lobby is getting cooked up for our 6th and Zephyr final game of the day.
After this game, we'll be sending one potential roster on their way to Pro League, but that is but yet settled. Before we jump into it, let's look at the leaderboards one last time here to see who stands above the rest currently and who will potentially and hopefully stand above the rest afterwards.
Let's talk a little bit as well when we look at these leaderboards about what these mean in terms of game performances. No Days Off with 59 points. That's, it's just the amount of points that it is. The fact that it's separated by, what is that, 10, 14? Well, yeah, we'll call it 14 points. Yeah, from LVH.
Yeah.
There we go. Math. The fact that it's separated by 14 points from LVH makes that a decent win. It's a win, 2 kills on top of it. It isn't too much. It isn't too bad. So the same thing can be said for 202 and LVH. They can easily take over No Days Off. For the boys, it gets a little harder. Still not impossible, though.
But this is something that we tend to bring up, especially when we get into 6-game series like this. The bar continues to raise. It realistically isn't 59 points on the board unless No Days Off faces their difficulties in the very, very early game, like we saw from Match 4 World's Edge. It won't be 59 points. It'll be closer to 60, 61, 62, or 3 at minimum here for these teams to hopefully eclipse. And that means for the likes of squads like LVH, 202, and the boys, you need to be putting up even more presence than the average that you can currently assume.
And it's what makes this really interesting as well, Apex Legends as a game, because if we look at the first place team and we look at the 12th place team, the 12th place team has some of the most power in this lobby. From 26 points, you may not be able to win, but by playing your best game, you could keep one team from Pro League. And that, of course, isn't the goal. But it's to do the best that you can, and sometimes that just means taking some unfortunate guys out.
I mean, it's something that will be above the test here for any roster. I know you bring up the early potential contest, but it is something that No Days Off were happy to walk away from in that last game, and it's something that I expect them to do the same with regarding this next position here. And with that being said, you've got to know No Days Off at this point. I know this is an anonymous lobby, and that's as difficult as it gets, but coming out of the picks of these last 5 games, it's almost like match point. Knowing that you have the opportunity to stunt the opportunity is what you need to find here if, say, you are a roster that either has the notion of, we'll say, direction or potentially position near the presence of them.
And let's talk about especially crucial positions pretty early on, because the boys have been a focal team ever since we jumped on over to World's Edge, and they managed to win their last fight really early on, get an additional 3 points, and have a pretty decent game, all things considered. Their downfall really being an ultimate super edge play once again, but they are absolutely still in the conversation with No Days Off, and this is where, when you need an above 20-point game, that maybe going a little hard is your best bet. And I'm not prescribing that, but I'm saying that the mentality is certainly understandable.
Hopefully, I mean, it's something that we know they're capable of. Granted, we still look to see if they are going to have the opportunity to do so. But the crazy thing is, I know we kind of set that up with the warning of, well, unlikely but potential. We already had a game like that in today's series. 202 was little but nothing. I mean, they were sitting in bottom 5 with 12 points before their 29-point game. And I'll be honest to you, I didn't hear, see, or even feel hide nor hair of 202 in that matchup prior to their win here. And that's the little things that can sneak up on you, especially if you're a team that is currently on the lead. 29.30 games are something that are, well, yes, usually at the incredible height of Apex Legends, but always the potential, even in moments like this, where teams are back up against the wall.
Yeah, this is, unfortunately, a risky spot, because to a degree, there's always some randomness in Apex Legends. It's the reality of a battle royale, and it's something that, especially this game, is going to impact a lot of teams. Now, the other thing that you can hold on to here, Zephyr, is that, well, you do not have to win this game, and though it certainly would be nice, picking up a win today can be a secondary objective, especially if you're a team that feels like it's a little bit too far of a reach. Instead, having your best performance in the finals lobby on a day could very well be the difference between you taking one of the last 4 remaining spots once we finish the preseason qualifiers.
That is true. And that's something that all teams have to keep in mind, even those who aren't with us here today, right? When we talk about the top 20 teams that have made it, even when we start to discuss the teams that had only been able to just barely breach the likes of semifinals. I know it's a major difference between 1,500 and down as far as low as 800, but showing up and continuing to find your competition here in the preseason qualifiers from this week to next to the following and the final is what puts you in the position to be a top 4. Because, Dia, I hesitate, but I'm pretty confident in this statement. Usually we only get 1 or 2 teams that manage to make it to every single final in these situations.
That's very true. Most teams, in the insanity that precedes the finals, get cut out at some point. We've dropped a lot of powerful teams on the way here, Zephyr, and I think a lot of teams that when they show up next week, people will be surprised to have not seen in this very first week of competition in the finals. Semifinals are difficult to get a hold of, and ultimately that's something that eludes a lot of teams because we talked about this earlier. It is a very different skill set than playing in the finals oftentimes. Being able to dominate the challenger circuit or the preseason qualifiers up until semis, up until finals, a team with 3 people that can click can do that. But a team that actually wins the finals has to have a little bit of macro behind them and has to have the ability to roll lobbies.
Well, it's something that we have seen here today as we are taking some time to get our players in the lobbies. We want to make sure that as we go into our final matchup of the day that we represent with entire competitive integrity here. I'd love to take some time, though, to discuss some of these teams away from the standings. Let's take a look more appropriately at the groups themselves as we take a look at some of these players more directly and have some conversations about that. And I'd love to start that one off, notably with the likes of No Days Off. Because this is a roster that doesn't host a lot of previous experience, doesn't host a lot of presence in the Apex scene. And while we've made mention of the namesake, Takeo, Sherbert, and more notably today, Plexus, have, while yes, competed in challenger circuits in the past, have never, ever come close to a day like this.
It's interesting, too, because you can see things like this reflected in the POIs. No Days Off have been landing over at Stormcatcher and Monument. Not terrible spots, but really not in high demand. Nobody's very excited about going Monument. They certainly used to be when the loot was much better and Fragment was the place to be, but dropping over by Monument these days, while it's a decent start, isn't as good as, say, places like Thermal Station or even Countdown Staging at times, and is certainly not as good as Lava Siphon. And so, when they're landing over at, again, places like Stormcatcher or Monument, we can look over at other squads like, say, Solo Q Goats that do have a lot of history behind them, who are landing at Mill and at Skyhook West, and say, all right, well, we expect that to be a big buff for their performance because they're getting this fantastic loot to start off the game. But Solo Q Goats are in 15th, No Days Off are in 1st, and that's not built off of loot. That's not built off of anything but some good, old-fashioned, clean Apex Legends that No Days Off are playing.
And Takeo, lots of presence from previous IGLing experiences alongside rosters that you may recognize like Katana, as they have shown up in ALGS previously, but one of the youngest competitors that we have here today. Notably 17 years old, kind of that Cinderella story that we ourselves have told many times between rosters, like our friends that have come through previously, like guys like Effect. So, we'll take a look and see if they are able to retain that and find their way confidently into the likes of Pro League here, but behind them are more notable. Are entities who are more than happy to have made their return. LVH, the most notable of the bunch here. I'll tell you what, Liffin, Hanzo with his new namesake, and Vapes definitely showing presence over previous years.
Hanzo has been so wild today, actually. Like, Jay Hanzo in today's games, well, maybe didn't make a whole lot of highlights last game, has been playing absolutely incredibly. I'm a big fan of what this player has brought into year 4, and we're about to see how far they can take that going into game 6, the final game of today. Zephyr, right here, we decide who's going to Pro League.
We appreciate all of y'all in chat and anyone else who's watching here or in those potential watch parties that I know you guys love to frequent, for abiding with us and coming and sitting through a lot of those restarts, because hopefully it hasn't made anybody cold. I know we're in the midst of winter, but you need to stay warm, hot, and ready here to find your success in our final game of the day.
How cold does it actually get in Texas, Zephyr?
Not
like,
cold at all.
Okay, nice. Cool.
20
Glad you know
at
I'm
the
alone.
minimum. Yeah, no, like, I don't even get to say the word cold respectfully. Just like I don't expect someone from, Canada to ever talk to me about things being hot. Not even, don't get out of here.
Yeah, that's understandable. Well, we'll see how, in this particular case, hot the match gets, because we're dropping in one more time. And folks have already started landing. We talked about the biggest contest being over by Monument, and that is, I expect, exactly where we will go quite early on, because the contest determines how the rest of the lobby is going to need to play things out. No Days Off and where they land is ultimately going to be not just a decider of their own fates, but everyone else's, and they've landed dead center over here in Frag East.
This is something that they have opted to do to service themselves into safety, right? After starting with a poor performance out towards the likes of Monument, I mean, why would you ruin your chances? You're literally one not even great game away from Pro League, one decent good game that you know you're capable of. Why sacrifice your early game? There is shots to be had, shots to be heard here, as 3 Dragons are making themselves present, and even we'll start to see Bakalal make their way up towards this choke. Even Rats extending towards the no-name area. I mean, literally pinched between 4 potential upsets. No Days Off need to make a safe rotation, and more importantly than that, they need to hide, they need to distract, they need to prevent these teams from really knowing who they are.
Break comes through, but no knock to follow after that. While taking a little bit off of the economy is going to be good. No Days Off managed to survive. And on the other side of this, 3 Dragons also get what they want, which is just a nice POI to themselves. They may not have taken out No Days Off and made this lobby a whole lot less scary for the other teams, but as the team in 12th place, it doesn't matter to them particularly. They just want to make sure they get this POI.
I'll tell you what, in the heat of presenting for these future Pro League qualifiers, or my apologies, preseason qualifiers, I mean, having the advantage of a complete POI as this team is maybe likely to move on is actually something dominantly for these future days. The boys, this is something more notable though. We did talk about early contest, and it seems they themselves, in their exchange against Need More Bullets, doesn't come true this time around. Instead, they've already made heavy-handed rotation towards Landslide and are continually looking here as opposite teams have given up position.
The boys aren't going to get a bite of all the loot just inside, so instead, LVH back off and put themselves over, up in Landslide. They've managed to take this high ground position away from the team that rotated before them. Should be a position that they look to hold on to as well. They've got plenty of rotational options out of here should they choose. LVH's actual decision-making looks like it's going to take them out towards the west.
Mind you, Passion here as well, a team, albeit in a very further position from the point score of 59, still very capable, right? As if we give as much credence over to the boys, we have to do the same for the likes of this roster. They only 1 point behind them, and they themselves only feet behind them in our current matchup. They're not going to opt to play through the choke themselves, albeit they don't see any knocks on the feed. That's actually something that probably elicits this rotation. Not seeing anyone truly punished out means that there's always someone potentially now lying in wait for position like that.
For that reason, we get a bit of scouting, which I really like from Yiku. Probably isn't going to need the gravity lift in the next couple of seconds, so instead takes that moment to determine if anyone's sitting over and staging, like we know the boys were earlier, yes, last game. Passion now get a little bit of loot to themselves and are going to continue up onto the high ground unperturbed while the players finish their looting of Big Mod and Stacks, and, fortunately for them, their elimination of the 3 average kills.
For them, it's something finished early by the likes of players, and a shout out to DJ there, apparently already looking for team on the end of their names. That's always something that, I mean, we'll see as we make our way through the rest of the preseason qualifiers. Here, though, the solo queue goats, the namesake, the ancient remedies. They are in the heavy push here. DiffQ with the Revenant on this chase. Unable to really assume an aggressive position, instead shot out, forced behind the wall, and a back to be stuck.
Some nice coverage going on here as well. Solo Q goes test the waters to see what they're able to get away with, but DiffQ isn't able to get away with much. The fact that they're shot in the back, however, means that Shiv goes down, and the same can be said of DiffQ. Well, they've got their Bangalore back into the game. They need some nice meds to survive this storm, and even the syringe is going to be a little bit late. Last tick going to come through, and Shiv's back on the floor, leaving Zara for the last standing member of Solo Q Goats.
And this is such a shame for this roster here. You can tell they feel the confidence on some of these rotations, knowing that it is the early round 1 of something like Skyhook. The presence of a zone that presents completely opposite on the map should give them the freedom to do what they do. Instead, they're picked off by 2 teams. And now even the boys, knowing that they need the presence of their KP, have opted for heavy rotations, looking for the 3v3 exchanges they know they love and can come out on top of there. Coming, the first to present, already dropping down that energy barricade that forces this roster out of market almost immediately, even with just 1 crack that has been found.
And now the shield healing from Conduit is quite a bit slower in Ring, as it's interrupted by that periodic tick damage that the Ring gives off. So as the boys push up, they are going to have to be cognizant of that fact. It's my turn to be amazed, though, Zephyr, as again we tune into the boys, and again they are negative rotating and have sprinted themselves over here to do it. Nice clean, however, on Solo Q Goats, as Zephyr barely knew what hit him.
Putting that gold bolt to work on that Eva, bro.
Yeah.
That isn't even legal in the States here. Not even in Texas would you see something like that. But for the likes of the boys, they're happy to present. That's going to be the first of hopefully many KP for them, as they have a mountain to eclipse. Something that does make it difficult, though, is that the more that they wipe out some of these other rosters, the more that it brings up the question. We look towards teams like No Days Off and how they present themselves. You're technically just wiping out the other squads that prevent them from getting better and better placements.
Grab another look at that very same team, No Days Off, as 202 make their way over towards the Mirage et Trois. They've been holding this choke for a little while, never extending too far on either side, but wanting to control a lot of area instead of play that singular big rock that we normally see teams sit on. Wanted starting to push up through the choke, however, could make 202's life all the more difficult.
Coming through there, it hasn't been a team with lots of success, but one that will be knocked nonetheless there. A big difficulty for 202, especially in what should be the presence of their last game. Nice drop there on the energy barricade. Raka Faka here, able to get some great damage off of that 99, and the split from the back end is going to present the flesh damage, but not the knock they need. A peek over the other angle will secure but 1, but for 202, their journey ends here.
Raka Faka played that really well, swinging around the wall, finding a bit of cover on the rock, but it just doesn't matter in a 2 versus 3 scenario 99% of the time. The 3 win it because of the additional just damage, health they have available. So much more goes in your favor. That's what can make Apex Legends such a punishing game. Need more bullets, hold high ground just outside of Thermal, continue rotating their way in, knowing very well that there's a team coming in behind them, but priority has to be on the rotation, as the last game, and especially as Need More Bullets, has slowly dropped down the leaderboard from 3rd all the way to 9th over the course of the past 2 games.
Now, for no days off, that's that team looking for that rotation, trying to opt for the wider swing, given that they didn't have the clarity to do so earlier. Leaves me questioning what their final game plan is. Something to note, though, is that they have survived at least to our top 14, which means that we pushed that number from 59 at least to 60, and albeit at but 1 point, Dia, it is always the 1 point that could potentially separate you from being in Pro League this first split and not.
Very much is. No days off. Very slowly moving in, not wanting to sacrifice that one member, that 1 point to any other team because of the punishment that we talked about earlier. But we've talked about this team plenty. We start moving up, and LVH have control of the very first chunk of terrain, rather, on this high ground. Aren't going to push it too much further, but we'll see what they can do. Jay Hanzo getting a little bit low and actually having to back off as he gets taken down completely off the wide swing from Falcons. This is problems for LVH, and unrecoverable problems indeed.
These are the two best rosters on the backside here that have had difficulty surviving. First 202, and now for LVH, forced to this low ground, are in a handed position for sometimes what we see being the end zone here over towards the opposite side. At least questions for later. For the boys, they've got work to do, and they know it better than anybody else. Forgot Strike Pack, just the next team at the cost and damage ahead here. For them, slowly shoring up that massive lead from behind. This is where it truly gets challenging, Dia, to make this cross, to play for this next zone. If they get themselves a position, the dream is still alive.
Already 2 squad wipes, 4 kills for the boys. It's pushing them slowly up the leaderboard, and from 4th, they're very close to being able to surpass 202 and LVH, who, as you said, are already encountering some trouble. No matter how far the boys make it today, whether they get into the Pro League spot or not, these points are going to stay with them and push them further up the overall leaderboard when we're counting across all 4 days of competition.
Now, for no days off, it is a happy position that they somehow managed to find here in the midst of staging after rotations from the east. For these other teams, it is but a nightmare. For them here, now sitting only the 3 squads ahead that will continue to accumulate their score. And for Passion, they're happy to start closing that gap. Players running for the hills here. Barbie, Kazakhs stopped in their tracks. 0-0 is down as Denze's looking to stick a battery here. Yiku with the wingman in hand is delivering the damage that keeps this roster alive.
All about the wingman clutch. Zone closes in, however. Round 3 is no joke. The little bit of assistance thrown back to 0-0 still will not get 0 into the ring. And Barbie finishes off the kill, leaving Passion down a member permanently in this game. Lest they get to a crafter and perform a miracle, Passion are playing this out as 2.
It's a bit of a shame here for Passion, especially off of what was an early and successful fight against the players being pinched out from the opposite side of that choke as well. Leaves them a bit too hard to handle, especially with 0-0 down here.
Boys take their own fight. Still holding on to high ground, continuing the rampage. Lemmy goes down. Good grab lift.
For them on the backside here, that's it. I mean, I won't even hesitate to say the dream is still left alive for Babylon, running for the hills. The boys are settled and set upon in stone for what was an incredibly aggressive exchange for today. Now the closest team besides them here being that of LVH. Granted, one with a point score that is all but more realistic is still even within their own issues. I mean, they don't even have Hanzo's banner, forced to make that craft and still stuck far and away from this zone.
That's a big knock though. With Liffin, Skynade taking out Kearney, and Nemesis taking out Falcons. LVH could have just picked up 2 KP that had they been playing on the low ground, had they been playing safe, they wouldn't have gotten. That 2 KP, potentially a difference maker, especially when we get to end game points. I love the way that LVH are playing right now. Just because they lost 1 player does not mean they're out of this for good.
No, it does not. But now as we talk about 10 squads remaining, no days off, they put another tick on the board, now at 61 points from just their placement alone. God fearing they find themselves KP as well, but the rest of these teams seem to be handling it themselves, eliminating from all ends for 3 Dragons. Only Official, the only one left standing here, set upon the corner, has to be careful. It's LVH that prevents this team from getting the full assault that they need, but immediately from behind, just with one single peek, 50 damage is accumulated from such a small rotation as our zone closes in.
They very well push up on this, and they do. LVH look for the swap and look for the path forward, but there is no time to sit up on this bridge. They have to push now. They still don't have Hanzo. This is still a duo, and as they see a gravity lift go off in the distance, Smoke will provide them a little bit of cover, being caught in the back. 3 Dragons go down. LVH pick up a kill. That one's secured. There are the 2. Previously, Liffin got them. Not so much, but LVH will take that singular point for everything that it's worth, dropping down onto the low ground. We got a respawn beacon coming in next to them, the chance to pick up a few more kills. If they just look down, Digithreat does the work, and Sorbin goes down. It's time to finish him off.
For Rats here, their final moments, but for LVH, a position that puts them at a major disadvantage. Kazakh from above with the wingman is the first to lay out Vaves and send them completely home. For the point score that they need, being just Liffin in the end is not the position you need to play from and not the position you need to run into. They'll find Mania before they head on out here. But for LVH down, for 202 eliminated, for Passion crowned, no days off, still set alive.
I cannot believe that they are just chilling here while everybody else faces the 7 trials. Players still, as you say, in this one, but nowhere near as they started this game at 11th. They would need a Herculean game, an impossible game. And it looks like no days off get to perform their victory lap now. They should have seen everything show up in the kill feed. They play safe, they play on low ground with very little loot. The way they got here is the way they're staying in it. Need more bullets. Hard scoped on no days off. Watching the bridge as well are the 1 gatekeeper.
This is so hard here. For teams that are far away, it's basically impossible. Stay healthy, and Bakal, the only 2 that are truly left standing in the presence of maybe eclipsing no days off, but they themselves have been able to make confident rotation to height, and now with the eclipse towards triangle, might be able to continually survive a train line ahead. They'll look for KP, and even if they get this elimination, that's big wins, big dubs. A peek through the dark veil as Sherbert goes lower and lower. They need to find this team, but they're sitting
literally
above
right next
the
to them.
box. They're above the box.
Oh my lord, the fact that No Days Off have lost nobody yet, that they are still somehow playing off of this low ground is insanity! But as one goes down, No Days Off are sure to expire to the ring. Mutually assured destruction for them and Bacalao. And need more bullets, look to be biting the dust as well. Dolph, maybe 10 HP, somehow is gonna pop this bat, but I can't imagine we go on for too much longer.
I'll tell you what, for No Days Off, confidently they are able to get some major wipes there before they go down, so they push that number somewhere closer to roughly 62 here. The only team close enough being that of Stay Healthy, and I'm telling you right now, Dia, they need to win and they need to eliminate everybody. They start with G-Dolphin, the first to be found. Still though, 9 points on the point spread, on the board, along this win that they need to accumulate if they want even barely a chance at usurping.
Still a massive game for every team left here. The chance to get yourself in so much of a better position when it comes to the future weeks of the Pro League qualifiers, and there is still a chance. There is always a chance, I suppose, but it is a small one. And the goal in front of you has to be just to play your best game of Apex Legends. To leave today saying that you showed everyone what you could do and put yourself in the best position possible. Unfortunately, on the low ground, that is looking harder and harder to do, even with the promises of future competition in mind. And Stay Healthy start to lay siege to the team just off north of them.
It's big damage down, and as players are eliminated, I think this all but seals today's fate for our winners. Still, the presence of being confident in picking up these wins and hopes for your overall standings are just as important, like you said, Dia, here. Wanted, still left standing. On the low ground there, still the presence of at least Shamani in full force. All three members still left alive as we pull it to camera to our top three. The cross of the Dark Veil gives everyone their space to survive for but another 20.
And realistically, it's two teams hard scoped at each other. Wanted and Stay Healthy know that they are the only teams that stand in each other's way. The climb up from Mask does look like we'll get somebody else involved, a bit of a wild card to come through. Stay Healthy, start doing the damage to Wanted, force them to drop down onto the low ground, and Mask is going to follow that up. So is Sharp. Wanted go down, and it's just Stay Healthy left on this high ground as they wrap down to the low. Needs to find 2 knocks. Mesuko goes down, and Shamani from below take the last game of the day.
Shamani there, taking advantage of the position, the control on both angles there in the end, forcing Wanted and Stay Healthy to be that direct excursion. It was great height play from the likes of Nisa and Mask, getting up there over towards the side to find most of that shield damage, even if they were the ones to realistically finish off Wanted there. We saw the presence of that Rev make its exchange over to the side and then turn around and find the successful win. And that always makes me happy. Our friends from Italy, of course, Shamani. You may know them previously on rosters such as Samsung Morning Stars and Reply Totem for Sherp, but happy to find a win.
Yeah, and a lot of these names, as we talked about, very recognizable. One, certainly going to be in Pro League here. Let me see if the standings are up, because I don't want to call for them if they're not up, but I'm pretty sure we got them off. Soon we'll have the standings to show everyone, and that'll be a time for celebration. In the meantime, I think that we can be very proud of what everyone has given us today on the first year of competition of ALGS Year 4. It's you know what, not entirely unexpected. Granted, watching scrims, but Conduit got some good presents. I think we've done pretty well for ourselves ever.
It's something that will continue to evolve here as we look through the rest of Year 4, as today is just the start. But Dia, today is also a day where we send one roster to new heights, to sit above the rest, to sit among champions, to compete in the official ALGS Pro League. It's to no surprise, like you said, a victory lap for No Days Off.
Wonderful finish from No Days Off, as they played so well in the final game to be conservative, to take no risks, and, well, it's something that normally a lot of people would look at and go, well, that's, you totally changed your playstyle. No, No Days Off didn't. No Days Off played like that basically all day. So many of their points coming from placement instead of from kills. While they were active participants in endgame circles, their focus was always on physically getting there rather than by eliminating teams.
And the crazy thing is they do it with no wins. That is, I don't know if we've ever had that happen. That's something that we'll have to go back and look at the standings. This might be one of the first rosters to ever qualify for Pro League without winning a single game. I might be wrong, but I'll tell you what, there's probably a lot of other teams who have ever done it here. Let's take a look at those standings. For No Days Off, they are heavily in the lead by a margin. For LVH 202, and even Stay Healthy, they're at the end so close to a win, still but almost full wins apart from this play.
Yeah, this was a surprising gap to have been developed, as you say, with no actual match victories picked up on the 6 games. However, with LVH and Stay Healthy right behind, I think that says a lot about where today's lobby ended up being, that those teams that were a little bit more consistent about getting into zone had so much more impact than those that were running into a few risks. And what it is about No Days Off is really hard to find, because part of a battle royale, as we said, is always going to come down to randomness, and No Days Off experienced their fair share of it, but they controlled for a lot of those variables with good, clean rotations that nobody was there to challenge them on. How many times did we see No Days Off fighting for a rotation? Like twice.
Never. Really never here, and it's something that puts them above the rest. And I mean, they start out, though, with big success on Storm Point, Dia. I can't walk away from major congratulations without pointing the fact that 50 of these 64 points were accumulated on our first map today after dropping eggs in Game 4 and only putting a 14 up on 5th through 6th. They've got their work cut out for them as they join the rest of Emea here on Pro League. But it is still happy days for the likes of Takeo, Plexus, and Sherbert.
Yes, and as you say, fortunately, they take no days off, so they'll have plenty of time to prepare between now and the first day of Pro League. We will still have a few tournaments going before then, however, as this was just the very first preseason qualifier, and we've not only got all of the other regions' preseason qualifiers to run through, but 3 more of our own right here in EMEA. So you can check back in over here on Versus, as we will have more preseason qualifiers to come in future weeks. We'll get the dates we'll get the dates up for you on our Twitter, and you can also find them in chat. So be sure that you're here to see history being made, to catch those early stories in Year 4. My name is Ben Dia, and I've been joined by the lovely Zephyr. A big thank you to all of you for tuning in, and to our teams for performing their best throughout this weekend. To Versus for powering all of this broadcast, and we'll catch you next time.